Hi, what's up, buddy?
Hey, buddy. Uh, I always have trouble knowing what's a good time to pop in or whatever. I
Now's as
figured
good a time as
you
any. What's up?
you just coming back from break might be okay. We haven't talked since prior to the election, and I kind of understand that you're kind of like angling yourself more towards like a ground game type of guy, right? I saw a highlight saying that you wanted to like run a Democratic campaign, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Given the last election that happened, what would be the ways that you would change strategy? Because and maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me on this, right? I feel like the like kind of old ground game shit was supplanted this electoral cycle by like the meme game, and I think it's kind of like happened twice with Trump.
Well, I
Where
mean,
it's
ground
like,
game is just one part of a campaign. Like, it's not, you're not
sure,
winning because of that. That's just like one aspect. There's that, there's media, there's your actual policies, there's the culture, the environment of everything else, right? Yeah, there's a lot going on, yeah.
yeah, right, understandable. So like, how would you lean into the kind of like meme game then, right? Like in terms of, because it seems to me that like Donald Trump, right, being a trash guy or whatever for the day, or going to work at McDonald's for an hour or whatever the fuck, right, had more impact than, giant $1 million fucking rallies with Glorilla and this, that, and the other thing, right?
For this, something I've talked about a lot, I think an issue is the media environment. I think it's just very bad right now for liberals. I think the conservatives have like totally hijacked a lot of the media environment, and we need to do a better job.
So what do we do? And I don't really identify as a liberal, but I'm on the left. What do we do, right? Like to counteract that?
I mean, like, I think, for instance, in the left, I think that in our media environment, we need to have like a media environment for like the Democratic candidates, like the way that the right has their media environment set up for Republican candidates. Like, I think that right now there's too many people that are considered as part of the left or the Democrats or whatever that don't support the candidates. I think that's a huge problem. I think that's something that needs to change.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been one of those, right? Like, definitely like not super supportive of the Democratic slate this time around. But I mean, politically, if you picked my brain, I'm on the left. So
Yeah.
like ejecting people like me,
Yes.
you think is like, okay? I mean, I'm fine with that. I really don't feel a whole lot of kinship, to be honest with you, as a left guy, and just in the way that I think with standard kind of like Democrat electoralists. But I'm wondering how you're going to win, right, without us.
I mean, you guys don't vote anyway, and you guys will never support the mainstream Democratic candidate, so there's literally no point in even trying to appeal to that side. I think building up a stronger media presence on the left that supports the candidate and can bring in more people to that media environment would be more successful than trying to appeal to a group of people that are fundamentally illiberal and would never support a candidate that could win in any mainstream U.S. election regardless, is what I would say.
Yeah. So, like I say, without us, as a guy that didn't vote for the candidate that you would have wanted me to vote for, right? Knowing that had the the burgeoning Harris administration or the Biden administration done certain things, right, I probably would have felt way more comfortable doing the standard kind of just show up, shut up, and vote.
Like what?
Well, for me, even stronger like support of labor.
Biden was the strongest president. Wasn't Biden the first president in the history of the U.S. to like cross like a picket line and talk directly to
yeah, right.
So and whatever you're saying there, no offense, I just don't believe you. I don't think there's anything he could have done that would have like the fact that happened and that still wasn't enough means that there's nothing that he would have done ever that would have been enough for you. So
we can dig into it. Like the NLRB, like his NLRB was great, right? But it left the loophole that allows companies basically to run out the clock, to just like never Like
you're purity testing, right? And when I say purity testing, there's nothing necessarily wrong with like making sure somebody does the right thing, but like you want everything. Like the fact that he was willing to make the appointments that he did, the fact that he was willing to make the negotiations that he did, that's not enough for you. You needed it's always going to be more. And if it was this loophole that was closed, then it would be another loophole or another issue with labor or another thing. Like the fact that
you basically I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, what I'm getting from you is like you think that if they were to meet me where I'm talking about, then it would be like, oh, he's not doing this enough. There's not any pleasing.
No, because I mean the reality is if you were a thinking voter, like the question is, who do you think was better for labor rights, Biden and then a future Harris administration or Trump?
I mean, likely a Biden or Harris administration.
Yeah, so that didn't matter.
I would say way more likely, to be honest with you, from my perspective, under a Biden administration than a Harris administration. But
yeah, but I mean, like that's
just my feeling on it.
But that didn't matter, so that's why I'm saying it doesn't matter. You should never try
Well, it mattered up until a point, as people were arguing about whether Biden was stepping up or stepping down, right? But anyway, I get what you're saying. I do understand your perspective on that as a lefty dude. It can seem like I think a lot of us are just kind of crossing our arms and going like, give, and then when you see a candidate kind of make overtures towards that, it's never enough. And I'd like to be less that way. You know what I mean? In terms of just when I'm having these types of political conversations, right? I'd like to be perceived less that way. Because I think I'm more open-minded than people give me credit for when it comes to argumentation, right? Like being open-minded to argumentation, right?
Okay.
And so another thing is like healthcare, right? So that's a big thing for me. And us being the only country in the civilized world that hasn't figured it out. And the fact that the Democrats just can't, for whatever reason, ever move any closer to that.
So what you just said is a lie, right? The Democrats did move closer to that with the ACA with Obama, right?
I mean, okay, the ACA, as I understand it, right, is a mandate to buy private insurance. That's not public option health insurance like every other civilized country.
It also revamped things in insurance, like for instance, making it so that you could no longer deny somebody coverage with a pre-existing condition, right?
Understandable, and you can keep your kids on your
until
stuff for longer,
or 26 or something, right? Yeah,
which is super helpful. I'm not against any of that. That's great stuff, but it still leaves tons and tons of people without proper health care. It still leaves people having to make
it increased the number of people. So for you, it's not good enough unless it's perfect. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not. No, for me, it's not good enough unless it's at least up to the minimum standard of every other country on this planet.
So, but we're not every other country on the planet. We're America, so we have to move at our pace, right? Do you think that Trump winning? Do you think that Trump winning moves us closer or further from having better labor rights and at least a public option?
I think it probably moves us farther from it.
That should be enough of a reason to vote. If that's not enough of a reason for somebody to vote, then in that person's mind, there's no reason to appeal. That's not a rational voter, right, at all.
In your mind, were most of them non-voters, right, or people that you consider non-voters? I don't talk about who I voted for or what I voted for. I don't think it's a productive conversation. My one California vote doesn't matter, right? But in the grand scheme, at the very least. Unless I'm voting locally, which is a whole nother conversation. But do you think that like most of the people that didn't show up for Kamala didn't show up due to apathy? Or was it?
I mean, my feeling on the election is just that most of it was just a referendum on inflation. Year-over-year inflation is big. A lot of people don't like that, and they voted against it. I think this is the trend all around the world. That's my feeling, generally speaking.
So more people have more money in their pockets. They're more likely to vote for the incumbent administration. People have less money in their pockets, or at least optically less money, right? Things cost more. Staple goods cost more. People are less likely to show up for the incumbent.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. So you genuinely, honestly believe that there is no point in trying to make inroads with a person like me, like in terms of politics, right?
No, because every single goal that you have, the Democratic Party is like measurably moving you closer to those things, and that's not enough for you because you have child's view of political progress, that it has to be like these massive overtures or else nothing counts. So you're either disaffected or removed from the system, and that it doesn't impact you at the end of the day because you're either too wealthy or you're not affected by these conditions that affect you, or you just have a very strange view of all or nothing politics, which isn't how our system works.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot of presumption about me there, but I guess we've talked long enough for you to make a presumption here, there, or
I mean,
everywhere.
if you care about healthcare, the pre-existing condition, like I know so many people, it was mainly diabetics that were impacted by that pre-existing condition change. That was like a life changer in and of itself. The people that tried to get rid of the ACA were the Republicans, and the people that want to push harder into that direction are the Democrats. This is undeniable. The idea that like voting for Democrats moves us further away from healthcare, they don't want to do any kind of public option. It's delusional. And then either you don't know how the government works, like you can't just have one election, you win, and then all of a sudden you have single payer healthcare or even a public option. Like you have to keep voting for Democrats. Like politics is a fight, it's a journey, it's a struggle. Like it's a never ending, movement towards a certain direction.
Yeah. I don't disagree with any of that. Like in terms of politics being, you're not going to get this instant sea change with every election. I think that's what makes a lot of people disaffected with the electoral process, right? I think that as time goes on, change is more starkly needed. And the glacial pace at which it can be achieved in this country leaves a lot of people dead or dying.
No, I think that the pace is probably appropriate. It's a big country. It takes a long time to do things. Like you can't just have revolutionary change instantaneously. That would probably lead to a more unstable system where shit would be like catastrophic, whiplashing back and forth every decade when things are changing dramatically. That would probably be a worse world.
Okay. Well, I guess we disagree on that. I don't know.
Really? Do you think right now, with the Republicans having so much power, would it be good if they could just like whiplash us back in another direction? Like right now in your world, the Republicans could get rid of minimum wage. They could get rid of the ACA in its entirety and the pre-existing condition.
When the Democrats had power, right? And measurably, the last time they had actionable power was right after Joe Biden's election, right? I think that when they had that very slim margin majority, that we should have heard less excuses, like Joe Manchin won't do it, Kristen Sinema won't do it, the parliamentarian
we passed
won't
more
do it.
legislation than we ever have. It was hundreds of billions of dollars in infrastructure and green energy reinvestment, in stimulus for the American economy.
But you said it yourself. The election ended up being a referendum on people's overview of the economy, having less money in their wallet. Shit costs more.
Yeah, but like the United States outperformed basically every other economy in the world, and it didn't matter. So who are you even competing against at that point? Like,
I mean, well, like, who are you arguing against? Is the counter question, right? Like, are you arguing that people are better off? They just don't think they are?
Yes, of course. Compared to where we could be, yeah, of course.
Okay. So the people that are on a relatively fixed budget, who now have to pay, double what they paid 3 years ago for eggs, milk, staple products, right? They actually have more money now.
I don't know if that's ubiquitous up and down for every single level, for every single product. I don't know if it's 2x the cost on all your groceries. Things are more expensive. People are earning more money than they were in the past as well. But I mean, COVID was a real thing. It happened. Prices all across the world increased. It happened. The question isn't like, did the United States somehow turn back the clock and magically?
Well, how does that change though? Like, okay, so it changed the world across.
Yes.
How does that change my? And I'm not saying I'm saying the theoretical family guy works a blue collar job, fixed, kind of like doesn't have a whole lot of expendable income. Why does it matter that eggs got more expensive in fucking Europe too?
Then it might not matter. That's fine. But then in that case, they can vote against their own interests. I mean, you have a right to vote for whoever you want to. It's just retarded. But I mean, I don't know what you're arguing against at this point.
Well, what is your short-term interest if eggs are more expensive?
Then vote for Trump and give people like me more tax cuts if you want. I don't care. I mean, what do you want me to say?
I didn't vote for Trump.
But I don't know what point you're arguing right now. I'm telling you, I understand why people voted the way they did across the entire world. I think it was a referendum on inflation, but I don't know if you're arguing that vote was intelligent or if it was, or if the Democrats should have done more to counteract worldwide inflation, or I don't know what you want.
I think coming at it from this was not an intelligent thing to do is going to alienate people who otherwise might be convinced, right? Not me. I don't care about appearing intelligent.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's just
so
not
what are
what
you
I'm
supposed to
about.
say, that it is an intelligent thing to do, that Trump will do a better job, or?
No, I'm saying maybe start meeting people where they're talking from. Start listening, right? Like if people say like, fuck, dude, my
I
paycheck
literally
used to
just
go a
told
lot
you, I don't know
farther.
what you're talking about. I told you that I understand why people voted the way they did. What else do you want me to say?
Right, but then your answer to it was, I understand why people voted the way they did, but it was retarded.
My answer to you when you're asking me why people voted the way they did is that if somebody's saying, well, what do we need to do? It's not just call people retarded. There's a whole host of things that we need to do. What do you mean? But I'm answering your question for why people voted the way they did, and then I'm saying that I don't think that the way that they voted is going to help anything for their problems.
So that drills down a little further, right? So you're saying you understand that people are in economic pain, but you want to try and explain to them that they're not, that they're actually better off than the rest of the world, and that's supposed to make their budgetary concerns better. And I don't think that argument's working.
Okay.
Right?
What do you think? That's not at all what I said, but what do you think their argument is?
Okay. Then I don't want to. No. Well, here's the thing. I don't want to recontextualize something that you said. If I'm misunderstanding your position,
there's different levels that we can speak on. If you want to have an argument of economics, that's what I'm going to say. If you want to have an argument of communicating to the average person that votes, it's going to be a different conversation. So you're asking me questions of like voting and economics, or at least that's how I'm answering them. Like in an economic sense, like what happened, how are we doing compared to the rest of the world? Like those are questions that you can answer. If you want to say how would you address an ordinary voter for these, then you'd have a different way that you would address it. Yeah.
I got you. And I guess that's my bad. I'm trying to come at you from the mind, or at least us trying to mind read the average person that
from mind
didn't
reading
show
the
up.
average voter, I would say that the most important thing to do is to fight in the media environment. We need a different media environment, because somehow Trump is able to take advantage of or take credit for things that he didn't do when the economy was actually worse, and everybody felt that way, but they don't feel the impacts of that for some reason. Why is Donald Trump able to say, weren't we better off 4 years ago, when 4 years ago we were all living in lockdown, fucking miserable? Something is wrong there. Something's disconnected. And it's not just libs are out of touch with ordinary people, because Republicans theoretically are stupid as fuck for saying that too, but for some reason they don't feel the same effects of that. But I think it's because of the media environment.
Is it possible that the mainstream national level political parties are both incredibly out of touch with the average person?
I don't know what the meaning of that question is, or how I'm supposed to answer it. I don't know.
You don't know what the meaning. Okay. Is it possible that the Democrats have lost touch?
I mean,
with
like
what
the
drives
lost touch,
people
in
to
a
the
way,
polls?
but in terms of like lost touch, it's not so much that like you're losing touch. It's that a lot of it is dictated by the media environment as well. Like Republicans are able to tell people what they should care about, and then they do care about those things. And without Republicans harping on those issues, people wouldn't care about those things. So it's not a matter of like, are you in touch or out of touch? It's a matter of like, are you touching them and making them care about the things that you care about? A person who lives in Pennsylvania is never going to give a fuck about asylum seekers or illegal immigration without Republicans blaring that 24/7 across all the media. A voter in Wisconsin isn't going to care about Leah Thomas or Iman Khalif or trans athletes without Republicans blaring that 24/7. So to say like Democrats are out of touch because they didn't signal better on these like trans issues, when the only reason people care about those trans issues is because Republicans are telling them to, is it's kind of a putting the cart before the horse question.
Okay. So what would you see the Democrats, like, let's say you could go back in time, right? And you could monkey with this election and the messaging of the Democrats, right? What would you change, right? As just a thought experiment for what you would do going forward, right?
I've already said it. I think there needs to be fighting for a better, a more productive left-leaning media environment. There needs to be a media environment on the left that supports the Democratic Party. And right now, I guess it doesn't exist in the same way that exists on the right.
I guess I'd like to hear, like, and I know you probably talk about this a lot, so if you'd rather not, we don't have to, but like, I'd like to hear just like bullet points from you on what that entails.
Yeah. So
if you don't feel like going through it all,
if I don't, I'll just tell you don't. So I've written things down for this, and I'll iterate on this. I need to finish this sometime soon. But like, for instance, like the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, should no longer be like lending candidates or having people go on to platforms that don't support the party. So like AOC or, you know, and anybody like this shouldn't be playing games with people like Hassan Piker or going on to, you know, leftist shows where people aren't supporting the candidate. It's weird that on the right, you need the buy-in of supporting Trump. And then as long as you have that buy-in, like everybody's cool to play ball. But on the left, there's so much engagement with media that doesn't support the party or the candidate. They never do. That's the thing that needs to stop. I think members in the media who are on the left need to be more careful when they talk about like when they talk about bias in the media. They need to stop both sidesing things. So CNN, MSNBC, your mainstream media outlets, and your alternative media outlets need to stop trying so desperately to appear centrist or moderate in that, like, well, both sides have problems or both sides are out of touch. Clearly, the Republicans are more fucking unhinged in a lot of ways, and people need to be less scared about calling that out. People on the left also need to do a better job, and this is going to be in your mainstream apparatus of people that support the party. You can be critical of people in the party without like, but also like strongly supporting them, right? Kamala is significantly to the left of me on a lot of economic issues, and people know that in my audience. People also know that I like voted for her 100%. It's not even close, and I encourage every single person to vote for her. But for a lot of people, like the Kalinskis, you know, you'll get like, well, you know, genocide. But I guess if you're in a swing state, you know, maybe you should vote for genocide. It's like, Jesus Christ, like that's like, what kind of support is this? But those are 3 bullet points I've written down for this.
Yeah, I think you and I have already had kind of like a long talk on the Israel-Palestine thing. I think we disagree on that. I think it was a huge optical wound on the Democrats this electoral cycle, but I don't want to relitigate the whole thing with you. You know what I mean? We can disagree on that. I think leaning harder into a forced solution in that area would have been would have probably got her elected. I'll be honest with you.
What, do you think that Trump is capturing those voters?
No, but yeah, to a certain extent, and you know this probably better than most people that do this lefty shit, right? For some god awful fucking unknown reason, Trump has this like mystique of being an anti-war president, right?
Well, it's because he's an isolationist. What do you mean?
Right. Well, no, but you understand that like he upped drone strikes and he fucking was like from the perspective.
No, I agree. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not trying
1 trillion%. Yes, I bring this up every single fucking show I go on where they're like, oh, no new wars under Trump. Drone strikes in Yemen that were obfuscated.
I mean, it was insane.
An airport in Syria, you know, we assassinated Soleimani. No, that's absolutely not true. But again,
Obama was horrible with the drone strikes, but Trump was arguably worse in his 4 years than Obama was in the 8 years he had.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, and nobody on the left. It's
nobody on the left. Nobody on the left made a good argument that is gonna land, because I'm telling you, like, dude, I'm a huge anti-war guy, right? You can try and drag me out of that. I'm a Dalton Trumbo, Johnny got his gun, anti-war. War is murder. War is fucking, a man crying in a ditch to see his mother one last time as his fucking intestines come out, right? Like, that's me. And I don't think anybody on the left made a cogent anti-war argument this time around.
Well, okay, sure, but I mean, it's hard because like where does that leave us for Ukraine and Israel? But
well, I mean, you know, these are the types of things that are going to be contentious between you and I, right? I don't have a problem talking about them, but I do have strong feelings on both Israel and Ukraine and what I think the United States could do, right? Okay. But I don't know that you want to go down that road, because we're talking more generalized kind of like campaign strategy, right? And I'm just trying to tell you from my perspective, the support and continued support of like war, when I honestly feel like, you know, and maybe you can disabuse me of this notion that Joe Biden could have picked up the phone and been like, hey, this, you know, America enforced fucking ceasefire now until we sort out what's going on here.
Yeah, the issue, this is a macro question of morality in general, but the problem is that we would have to go down a whole philosophy route. Like, being anti-war or pro-peace, peace is not really what anybody's looking for, and peace is a very naive thing. Like there was peace in America when we, had slavery.
Notice I didn't say peace. I
Yeah,
didn't
know.
say
I'm
no,
just
no.
saying, I'm just saying. I understand. I'm just saying that like there is no when one side wants to fight, you can't just be anti-war. When Russia wants to invade Ukraine, you can't just be anti-war. You have to stand up to that, and that's a pro-war position to a lot of people. So what do you do?
If China landed here in California, my anti-war position would at the best lead me to being a POW. At worst, probably just get me slaughtered. Right. So, no, I understand that peace is sometimes enforced by war. Right.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm not naive in that like we're gonna have this complex multinational society with no conflict ever, right? It is how we as a nation that stands as maybe still the most powerful military on the planet, right? As to my understanding, how we enforce our presence on other nations matters to me, right? And so I would rather that phone call have happened and we start sorting it out with international courts and international bodies, right?
Well,
What's going to happen between these two?
Asking.
So I'm talking about like the United Nations, right? I'm talking about
but I mean, like,
the United Nations enforcing a peace between these two nations.
I understand what you're saying. The United Nations, right? The body of the United Nations that would be in charge of doing like big moves like this would be the United Nations Security Council, of which Russia is a permanent member. So
okay. So in order to count, see, this is maybe I got a blind spot on this. I get accused a lot of like, that sounds like Russian shit. And I honestly, like, I'm not tuned in. I'm not a tanky guy. I think Russia is a shithole. You know what I mean? You're not going to catch me making excuses for Russia. At least not in my mind. But a lot of people will say when, I get into how I feel about Ukraine and how the United States ought to handle it, right? Or ought to have handled it, maybe, looking retrospectively. Okay. I get accused a lot. But I just want to, like, make that explicit, dude. I'm not a fucking communist. I don't even really call myself a socialist. Like, I'm like just a labor left guy.
Okay.
That being said, my prescription for that area of the world would have been a UN enforced ceasefire before.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying. Okay.
Right,
I'm just saying that, like, so you have like two big parts to the UN, right? You've got the United Nations General Assembly, which is made up of all 196 member states. And then you've got like the United Nations Security Council. Whenever you get like big shit from the UN, like sanctions or like enforced, like, no-fly zones or crazy shit like that, that's coming from the United Nations Security Council. Now, on the United Nations Security Council, there are, I think, 5 permanent members, and one of those permanent members is Russia. The reason being...
The other 5.
I'm saying that, like, and you have to do things like these people have something called veto power, which means that they can one member can automatically veto anything that comes out of the United Nations.
So who is Russia supporting you're saying that they would be a spoiler vote on the Security Council?
Yeah, Russia would never vote for sanctions or anything on themselves. They would never vote to stop themselves.
Pro-Russian? So allowing the Israeli-Palestinian kind of conflict to rage out of control and materially supporting it, is that a pro-Russian thing?
To some extent, yes. Because the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is part of a broader conflict in the Middle East, which is the Israeli-Arab conflict, which is kind of morphed into it's evolved into, it's become incorporated by this Iranian-Saudi conflict. So there's an Iranian axis that is composed of or comprised of like Iran, kind of Iraq, and Syria, and that's supported by Russia and North Korea and China. And then you have the Saudi Arabian axis, which includes Israel now, which is supported by the United States. And the Palestinian issue that's supported by that Iranian axis, so Iran and their foreign actors like the Houthis or Hezbollah or Hamas, and Russia is obviously in support of that side. And then on the other side, you have Saudi Arabia, that axis, which includes now Israel, which is supported by the United States. So it's an extension kind of that, yeah.
is this so my understanding is not specific but broad, right? So am I right in saying that this is an issue of the war, like multipolarity in the world, right? So
I mean, it would be a
you're
symptom
talking
of
about
multipolarity, but sure.
you're okay, a symptom. Fine, fair enough. Okay, so we're talking like BRICS, right?
Sure.
So
Although that's not really a big thing yet, but yeah, what about it?
Well, do you think it will be like, well, in this discussion, that is kind of what we're talking about, right? We're talking about a different axis of power with different desires for the world and different plans, right? For their influence on the world, coming as counter, countering one another in a military and economic way, right? Like working opposed to one another in certain ways, right?
Yeah, I don't know what you're asking or what you're saying exactly, but
okay. Like I was just asking if, like, my understanding of the kind of like coming multipolarity of the world is what you're talking about, and I guess the answer is no.
well, I mean, like there might be. I mean, there is a little bit of multipolarity right now, but
Sure.
yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry if that was a non sequitur. I was just trying to like understand how this fits into my less specific knowledge on this broader kind of talk, right?
Okay.
Because I'll be honest with you, where I come from is a much more just kind of resistant place, right? When I see people dying, and I'm not trying to fucking be a moralist on your show, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I see average people dying, who's to blame for that starts to matter less to me than stopping it.
That's great, but those people don't even agree with you. Like, no, like in history, like generally, depending on what you're talking about, those people don't even agree with you. Like the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong didn't want to just stop people dying. They wanted to expel the United States from Vietnam. In the Civil War, the North and the South didn't just want people to stop dying. You know, the North and the South fought for either a unified or an independent United States. Or like in the like, yeah. So
you're talking about broad experience, right? You're talking about a nation state operating as a big organism, right?
Yeah.
Versus the singular experience of a soldier whose guts are falling out.
Yeah, that's
right?
fine. But singular experiences of people are also part of broader narratives that like define what those people are willing to do, right? Like when morale for a country is high, like individuals are willing to die for their country to further some political belief or idea.
And then when but there are times in history too where the worm turns, right? And people start to question
Yeah, of course. That
the
happens as well.
validity
Yeah.
of throwing their bodies upon the fucking
That's true.
pyre.
We left Vietnam, right? Yeah, especially because of the videos and the footage of a lot of people coming back injured and traumatized from war. Yeah.
Right. And that and I know you understand the political situation of Ukraine and Russia probably way better than I do, given how long you've covered it. But my understanding, and the thing that matters to me more than the broader context, is the million people in the dirt, dude.
It's
million
not,
fucking
listen,
conscripts in the dirt.
That's fine, okay? But when you care about things like dead people, you're coming from the West, where that's like the most important thing to care about, right? Like just whether or not somebody's alive or dead is like the most important thing to care about, okay? That's all that matters, because you have a country, you have a narrative, you have a story, you've got a government, you've got all these things that are working for you, okay? And now all you have to think about is like, okay, well, am I going to die or am I going to live, or is this person going to die or live? And that's it, okay? Right. When you look at, and there's broader narratives here that even I don't understand, because I'm not a part of it, because I don't have that lived experience. So I'm very, very, very loosely going by what people say, okay? But Eastern Europe has fought for legitimacy. Places like Poland have fought for legitimacy to be included in the Western world for decades, okay? This idea of breaking from the Soviet Union, of being your own country. Like, we are a people. We are more than just foreign fucking workers for British people. We're more than just temporary visa stays, to work in the summer and then go back to our shitty Eastern European countries. Like, we want to fight our corruption. We want to join the rest of the world. We want to be real countries with real people that are free of like corrupt and crazy leaders and bureaucrats that are trying to fuck us over constantly. Like, we're trying to become a thing, okay? And Ukraine has been historically a country that's had a lot of issues with corruption and a lot of issues with trying to break from that stereotype of Eastern European destitution. And they were on the path to doing that. And they had a leader who was, you know, the populist support was, hey, we're finally going to have access to European markets. We're finally going to make a deal with the European Union. We're finally moving in that direction. And then they had a leader who was like, actually, no, we're going to go back to Russia, get fucked. And as a result of like all the protests and all of the riots and all of this, they have their huge 2014 Euromaidan. And basically what they see in front of them is, oh, it's business as usual. Here comes Russia, there goes Crimea, and now we're back in this world where we're going to be subjugated by Russia. We're not a Western country. We're not even a real country. We're a group of fucking losers who nobody else in the rest of the world wants to help or do anything for. Obama's not doing fuck all for us. Europe isn't doing fuck all for us, and now Russia's fucking with our shit again. And this is a group of people who desperately want their own country, and they want to have a country that they can be a part of, that they can be proud of, that they can have a narrative and a place on the world stage, who slowly see themselves being eaten and consumed by the Soviet Union again. So to look at those people and go like, well, isn't it bad? Like a lot of you guys have died. You should just make peace. Like that's easy to say as an American with your own country, your own government, your own elected leaders. You have a story. You have all of that. That's a completely separate thing to look at Ukrainians who are bleeding away whole sections of their country while the rest of the world stands by and watches. And they'd be like, shouldn't you guys just stop because there's so many of you dying? Like, do you understand how horrible that is? Like, it's such a Western take. Not to say that death is good, but there's something more at play here. There has to be something more at play than just some people dying, because that's what's moved nations and peoples, is more than just like a concern for an individual or even just your family or even just your neighborhood. It's like this cause for an entire country, right?
Can I tell you something?
Yeah, what's up?
And I'm not even lying to you. Mm-hmm. That was incredibly moving and well done.
Thanks, buddy. I Ukrainian.
No. Like, here's the thing. Maybe I'm like, it's not. Your kind of implication that the other end, that my end of this must be, I don't support Ukrainians, is where we have a fundamental disagreement or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, but.
No, and
that was well done.
I know that you're not like anti-Ukrainian, and you said that you don't support Russia, so I agree with you. I think sometimes in the West, I think we take for granted all the things that we have, and then we just assume that everybody else has these like same larger narratives and everything, and they just want to like not have as many people die for a thing. And it's hard in America. It's really hard to imagine wanting to die for a thing, because for the most part, like things are pretty good over here. Like, fuck, I don't want to die for anything right now. Like that's a pretty tall order. But given like a different set of circumstances, you know, maybe, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't like, look, I was talking about this kind of earlier. I was just doing kind of a nothing stream and I was talking earlier about how like I'm incredibly American in terms of perspective. And I was kind of making a joke about it, right? But I cannot help that, you know, I'm just not super well traveled, right? Mm-hmm. I've never really had that opportunity in my life. And the times that I did maybe have the opportunity to make some sacrifices and do that, I just squandered those opportunities. I'm not saying that I couldn't. I'm not like fucking dead yet, but I'm not well traveled. I've been to Mexico, nominally to Canada. I don't even think I've crossed over into Canada. Been close, but I've been all over the United States. I have a very blue collar, kind of like working class background. And I think it's very separate from the world that you operate in.
Sure.
And I think it puts us at natural, like, because look, I see who you've got on screen, like, other than me, right? Mm-hmm. Hassan, you're engaged in these kind of like online ideological battles, right? And I never really wanted that from our interactions from you, because of moments like that speech you just gave, trying to kind of like give me perspective on how I might feel were I a Ukrainian person, right?
Sure.
Beyond just the horror of my whole family's dead now. Dude, my father died in it. My mother died in it. My brothers and my sisters are dead, right? Mm-hmm. That as an emotional person, I think that's what I latch onto.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I think that it's hard to see down the road what waits for you if people aren't willing to make those sacrifices, right? Because there's a lot of like the Anna person who comes here and talks a lot. Like, I'm pretty sure her dad died just in a Russian bombing of a Ukrainian city. Like, there was no dignity or
Yeah, I was
nobility.
I was listening to her. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, so, well, fuck, like if other people aren't willing to step up, and honestly, like how much of the world has been carved out by people that were willing to step up and make these sacrifices, whether it's on behalf of a large group of people, like the revolutionary people in the American colonies against Great Britain, whether it's from revolutionary people like Nelson Mandela and people fighting in South Africa, whether it's, civil protests like MLK, whether it's individual, like there are so many people where they're like at some point, and I don't know if it's just there's a slot in the human brain for it, so we're all programmed to some extent to have these feelings. Something is larger than your life, or even the life of a family member, or your life if you have a family. Like something is bigger there that humans are like intimately and innately gifted with the ability to understand, and that's why countries rise and fall, right? It's because people are capable of seeing something larger than themselves. Yeah.
I had, I mentioned a book earlier, Johnny Got His Gun by Dalton Trumbo. And that was, I used to have a way, probably a more standard American view on war. Don't like it, but necessary in certain cases. And, minimizing the civilian casualties is something that you could possibly do. And that should be that sort of, and then I read this book and it just broke me, bro.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know if you've read the book or you're familiar with its contents at all, but it's a very intimate retelling of like a World War I soldier's kind of experience becoming a complete invalid, right? Like blind, their jaw is blown off. They're deafened by what happens to them, so they can't hear anybody. They're basically just a husk. They can't move. They're paralyzed, right? And it's their internal life in the wake of war. And when they went to war, right, they were filled with this kind of idea that you're saying, right? This I want to put my life on the line for something bigger than me. But at the end of it, broken and filled with heartache and just a desire to go back to before they made that decision, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I mean, I don't deny that's a thing. That, honestly, the thing that's given me probably the most kind of perspective on this is I'm sure that you remember when we grow up and we're in high school and we're watching videos of the people, getting off the boats and going to Normandy and World War II and World War I and all this. And they always told us, like, these are little kids fighting. They're 18, 19, years old. These are just children. And, I'm in high school. It's like, okay, I guess like these are adults, but, okay, I guess they're kind of young compared to other people, right? Now being 35, right? The idea of an 18 or 19-year-old going to another country with military training and rifle to kill people, that's an insane proposition. That's just that's just an unbelievable thing in my mind. Whereas when I was in school hearing about like 18, 19, okay, whatever, I guess these are basically adults, right? Now it's like, holy shit, these are actually like toddlers. So yeah, I mean, like it sucks, and it's not good. Like war is not a cool or good thing for sure. Yeah.
Do you think you because you have a son as well, right? That it has changed since you were that age and in high school and shit, right? Like you have a different perspective because of your boy.
No, I think for the war stuff, no. I think that perspective just came from getting older. Obviously, I mean, I also wouldn't want my kid to just die for no reason, but I'm just saying just being older in general gives me a much different perspective on younger people. Because as you go through the years, right? Because like when you're 23, 24, you think like, ooh, like 18, like those people are so, young. And then you were like 30 and you look like a 22-year-old, like, bro, you're just like a fucking kid, And now I'm 35 and like everybody under 25 is like, yeah, you guys are still in school. You barely work. You have no relationships. Like, yeah. I just think as you get older, that's like a thing. I don't think that having a kid is what necessarily changed. Like, oh no, my son could die. It's just more the idea of how young in general people can be.
Sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. There have been other things that happening.
Do you ever personify it down to that level? Do you ever think like my boy, being sent to the front lines to defend, if you were a Ukrainian streamer, right? Do you ever put that face on it, or do you think that's just emotionally compromising your ability to be logical about it?
You have to be really careful when you talk about like emotion versus logic, because at the end of the day, humans are driven by emotion, and to pretend like that can't be like a lot. Like, for instance, like if you're in charge of military like troops, if you've got like I mean, anybody with military experience here that's even like deployed, you know, in forward positions or whatever, like whether you have like military people under your command, whether you're playing a video game, whether you have a corporation, things like morale, which is emotional, are some of the most important things for your people.
Right.
You can't just like feed them logic and say, we're going to go and blah, 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 blah. You have to keep people in high spirits. That's incredibly important.
Yeah.
For having a kid, for me, the thing is, the thing is just like military conflict like that is so far removed from anything the United States is generally involved in, like getting drafted and stuff like that. The things that having a kid moved me on were things like access to good schools or healthcare or, you know, financial stuff is the big thing in the United States. That having a kid is actually what moved me from being libertarian to being more left, is when I saw how different his life could be just because of things I could financially afford for him versus what it would be otherwise. But for military stuff, that's just so far removed from the average American experience that it's hard to, or I don't think, yeah, I don't think about it as much like that. But I mean, like, to your credit, what you're saying is it is still like, that is it's a lot. And there are a lot of people that come back from, and it sounds like, and it sucks too, because people in the military even predisposed towards this. Like, if you come back with a wound, you know, like like a missing limb or something, everybody has a lot of sympathy for you. But if you come back, and even if you don't even have a formal PTSD diagnosis, like, it feels weak and feminine and horrible to complain about, like, you know, being in areas where you hear gunshots or you're called out to go and fight, and you can't even like emotionally process the fact that this might be the last time you leave, you know, your base in your entire life. Like, those are hard things to deal with. And I have a lot of sympathy and sympathy for people that are involved in that, because it's hard to talk about it even, because a civilian won't understand, and you didn't have like a diagnosis for a disease. So that's a really difficult thing to deal with. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm gonna be like probably more honest than I would be, because I feel like you're doing the same, right?
I feel like I'm always honest, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, you are, but I mean, like, I don't get to, like, it's different watching you interact with other people, and because, you know, I'm trying to meet you in a different place than I think a lot of people come at you.
Yeah.
And so,
sure.
But anyway, it can be. I'm trying to pick my words carefully. So I don't want to trauma dump on your stream or whatever, but I was the victim of a violent crime and have horrible PTSD as a result, right?
Yeah.
This doesn't make me a special snowflake, right? But it did feed my ideology on all of this, right?
Yeah.
When I hear stories of soldiers, and conscript or not, that go away, that come back broken like that, right? It's just, it goes all over me, because I understand what that can, you know, I have never been in a war zone, but I had a pretty fucked up, crazy thing happen to me that you won't meet many people, you know, kidnapping, carjacking, held at gunpoint, forced to strip naked, run out into the middle of a field in the middle of winter, you know, told that I was going to die, you know, the whole night. It's horrible. It's hard for me to separate that from how I feel about the broader context of war, right?
Sure.
I understand it's flippant to be like a hippie and put your, like, peace and love, man. I get that kind of, like, in a modern age and from an adult perspective, can be cringe. But I'm steeped in that, you know?
Yeah, I understand. I guess here, this is the only thing I guess that I would say to keep in mind, is that there are people that have had those experiences, and there are people that have seen other people around them that have had their experiences, and like they still go out and they feel like it's important to fight, or they still go out and they feel like it's important to support the military or be engaged in these activities. So there has to be something bigger driving them. Despite the fact that these are horrible experiences, there's something else going on there, that in Ukraine, there's still so much broad support for the war, despite the fact that so many people have seen so much death and suffering and destruction around them. Like, something else is at play there that's worth keeping in mind, that in the West, we just don't really have to think about, you know? Like, it's so much different. Like, I would even say this, like Iraq and like Vietnam and stuff, like, you know, what's happening there? We have American soldiers going over to another country to fight for a very intangible political, geopolitical, geostrategic mission. It's like, you know, whatever. Like, if tomorrow, you know, if my son was 18 and Taiwan is getting invaded, like, I think the United States should do something to stop that. But like, man, would I want my son to go to Taiwan to fight? That's a really rough one. If he really wanted to, maybe. But if my son was 18 and tomorrow Chinese,
like,
if my son was 18 and tomorrow, right, Chinese troops were landing on the shores of Washington and California and shit, like I would grab a gun with him. I'd be like, all right, let's go. We're gonna go fucking kill some fucking Chinese people, I guess, because holy fuck, like this is my country that you're invading. It's just such a different feeling. And in the West, we're so insulated from that. Who the fuck is invading the United States of America, right? Yeah.
But I mean, like theoretically, I understand what you mean, though. And to be honest with you, despite our differences politically, I guess we're the same way in that. Like if somebody's landing here where I live and trying to take my, this society over, despite my critiques of it, and maybe even like my displeasure with it, I'm grabbing my gun and whatever, we're gonna go kill whoever's coming, right? So. Like that's we're together on that, if nothing else. I just don't know how to shake free of it. Like your chat doesn't like me very much, and that's cool. I understand that, but like for me, this is an important conversation because typically when I try and have this conversation, the person refuses to meet me where I'm at all, and even acknowledge the humanity of my position. Right? Even if you think I'm wrong. Ultimately, prescriptively, you're at least like giving me that like fuck, like emotions are what people run on. So and I'm not out here trying to be Mr. Political streamer or whatever. This stuff just interests me, right? And I appreciate you taking the time to explain that stuff to me.
Yeah, no problem. You can also talk to Ukrainians and other people too. Like they all have their own perspectives as well on it, but yeah.
Sure, and I have I talked to Dylan Burns. I don't know if you know Dylan Burns at all.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. I talked to him a while back, and we had a conversation. And as far as like agreeing on what should have happened or whatever, I don't think we came to an agreement. But it was nice to talk to him because it didn't immediately escalate into like just shit flinging bullshit. Because there's enough of that. I engage in enough of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. You brought up Vietnam and the Middle East and stuff, and that being kind of different. And that's another thing I'm steeped in, right? Is like I came of political age right at the dawn of 9/11, and then the insane military kind of actions that came in its wake. And one of the things I've always had a hard time shaking, and people will throw at me, is like, oh, Paul is kind of brain broken or America bad, I guess is how you guys put it, because of just how awful those wars were and how much malfeasance I think we all agree there was. I don't know. At least I don't know how you feel about that shit. Maybe I shouldn't assume. But I don't know how to shake free of that either, or even if I should. Right? Isn't that like the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, right?
I mean, like there's a saying that like a cat that touches a hot stove will never put its paw on a hot stove again, but it'll also never put its paw on a cold stove. Like it's possible that you can have a negative response to something that was bad, and it's good to have that negative response, but just don't overgeneralize it to every other thing. Like just because something bad happened once doesn't mean every single thing in that domain is always bad, right? There are definitely some things that are worth fighting for, even if sometimes we fought for less than noble reasons in the past.
Yeah. No, I agree. And so it's one thing to understand that trap or that perspective, and another thing to shake free of it. Right? So much of what I believe in is wrapped up in the desire to prevent harm to people as directly as possible, right? In my mind, if and I'm just gonna say, and like, look, dude, I have no fucking I'm just a fucking hippie in California. So listen, in my mind, if when Putin moved in and was like, I'm taking the Donbass, right? If two things would have happened, we just went, all right, and then went, and now Ukraine is in NATO, right? I think that probably would have been better from my perspective than 2 million people in the dirt or whatever the running total is over there, right?
Sure.
Russians
and here,
and Ukraine.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I would just say that on that, there's a lot of just like factual information you have to digest to understand why that would be impossible or not. Like Ukraine wouldn't have been able to join NATO at that point. It would have been impossible for it to happen.
Well, there's like a border dispute clause, right? So you can't
Well,
join
there's the fact
NATO.
that there's disputed territory, so they would have had to eject that territory completely. There's the fact that, like, geopolitically, Russia, the response to that would have been, the whole world would have been like, hold on, is NATO just going to start drafting in countries that are involved in conflict? That might set a bad precedent. It could have been that maybe Russia sees that joining as not as legitimate, and now they start testing it. And well, if they can bomb, Ukraine that's in NATO, can they bomb Poland or the Baltics? And then there's also the fact that to join NATO, you need a unanimous vote. Every single member state has to vote yes on it. It would just, for practical reasons, it would be really, really, really hard, and probably not even a good idea for that to happen. There's a lot there. Yeah.
I mean, you would support ultimately Ukraine being a part of NATO, right? As a Russian border state, it seems like the idea of NATO being a group of Western countries that contain Russia and its expansionist tendencies, right?
Would I join? Would I have supported Ukraine joining NATO in like 2013? Sure, but I don't think ascension to NATO membership in response to conflict, I don't think that's good for a whole host of reasons. It's probably really not good. It lends to a lot of instability.
Can you give me like the for dummies bullet points of a couple of like the main reasons you'd think that like setting that precedent would be bad? If the ultimate goal is containing Russia, right? That's the pretty old like open goal of NATO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then what's the problem with just like putting that red line and saying like, hey, you put a toe in here, you're basically going to war with the United States, right? That's the idea of NATO.
I just think it goes to what I said before, that like, I don't know if every single person would accept in NATO, would allow Ukraine to join. Two, I don't know if it would motivate, if Russia really wants to fight somebody and they know that they're going to join NATO immediately, I don't know if that causes them to mobilize their military in a different manner. Three, I don't know if somebody joining that quickly and in that manner would be seen favorably by the rest of the world institutions. Does the UN look favorably on that? I don't know.
Like a credibility issue, you think? If like we're just
I don't know
using it
about that,
in reaction to an invasion, like sure, but from the perspective of preservation of life in both of these countries, right? We're talking Russian conscripts and Ukrainian conscripts.
I think so.
Right?
Preservation of life is a byproduct of these international agreements. It's not like you start there and then you move outwards, because like it sounds weird to say this, but like life is not that important. What matters is like quality of life and rights that you're ensured. Correct, right? Like, so for instance, like there were a lot of Africans that had life in the United States when they were brought over as slaves, but so what? They were abducted from their family and they were brought over as slaves. Or there's women that have life as sex trafficked people, or there could be people that have life who are subjugated to all sorts. So we're really talking about like an assurance of some sort of rights that allow you to live like a life worth living. From there, we have these international organizations, we've got nation states, we've got individual countries and ways that they run, and these are the systems that we're looking to protect. There's a ton of ways to quote unquote protect life that doesn't ensure rights and the freedoms of people to live the lives that we think they ought to be able to live. So you would have to start from that.
There's been such a massive diaspora of people out of Ukraine, and then just a massive amount of death in that country, that it's hard for me to imagine them ever going back. Like, it's going to take generations, right, for that wound to heal and for people to come back home and trust that they can come back home after fleeing. Like, it's just, like, I'm sorry.
It's a lot. I understand that, but like when they were under the Soviet Union before, right, they had like literally the Holodomor, which was so many people.
Like a Holocaust, right?
Well, I don't know if I would say it's a Holocaust. I'm just saying there were millions and millions of people that died at gunpoint to things like starvation and stuff, which is why a lot of ethnic Russians live in places like Eastern Ukraine or Crimea today.
Was it enforced starvation?
That's a debated thing, but basically,
what's your take on it?
I haven't done Vyvanse reading into it, so I don't have a strong take on it. It seemed like there were massive famines, and the issue is basically like This is my, oh my God, I'm giving such an uneducated take on this because I haven't done a deep dive into this, but it seemed
Well,
like,
you're not exactly talking to the most educated guy.
yeah,
So
I understand. I'm
you're
saying
fine.
it for my audience so people don't parrot my opinions. Like I have like a hugely educated opinion. It seems like there were massive famines across the Soviet Union, communist countries especially, or countries that were working towards industrialization had issues dealing with famines. And if there was a famine, which there was, you know, if a whole bunch of Ukrainians and Kazakhstanians die as a result, well, then so be it. It's convenient for the Russian Empire. They can move in a bunch of their own people, you know, do their reciprocation programs. They'll requisition and steal food and bring it to, you know, Moscow, which they did. So, I mean, like, was it intentional? I don't know. But, like, don't ever let a good famine go to waste, I guess. That seemed to be, you know, their position on it. So, I don't know. That's how I feel about it. But regardless of why they died or what was going on, like, that was still a huge thing that happened. So, I mean, you know.
I mean, what I would think that like, if we're going to talk about like the political expediency of, you know, let's to the last man keep Russia from taking a slice of this country, like knowing what Russia did in this region when these regions were part of the USSR, right, before it fell.
Sure.
It should be part of the conversation. I'm not saying you have to be the guy that looks into that, but it would be interesting if you did, because
Wait, looked into what?
Well, like what were the political implications of the Holodomor that you brought
I don't
up?
think that's relevant for today. I think the thing today is that,
Well, don't you think it is though? Like these people, like just a few generations ago, you know, when our grandparents were celebrating VE Day, were getting fucking starved to death. You know what I mean?
sure, but I'm just saying that, like, in 91, Ukraine was its own country. That's it. That should be the end of the story. The fact that Russia's invading them now is not good, regardless of what's happened in the past. Like, yeah, I don't think you need to go that far back to justify anything today. But yeah,
fair enough. I'm keeping kind of some bullet points of my like takeaways, at least for myself. Right, is that I'm a bit stuck in a way of thinking that isn't very modern, I guess. Is the nicest way to put it.
Okay.
Maybe a little boomerish on modern geopolitics and stuff, because well, this is another angle. You know, I'm a 90s kid, well, 80s and 90s kid. I was born in 80, so I got a little taste of both. And you know, I think you and I kind of like share that. You grew up in the 90s as well, right? And like the idea was don't trust authority, right? Fuck the man, that sort of mentality. Like, government's lying to you. They're all a bunch of fucking white criminal pieces of shit. And they're bleeding you dry, man. That type, I'm not going to lie to you. That mentality, like, has stuck with me my whole life. I have an inherent distrust of institutions and stuff. And do you think that is like negatively impacting my ability to like understand this stuff?
It's so hard for people not to be binary, but like, this is what I would say. And everybody calls me like an institutional shill, but what I would argue is, here's what I would say, okay? Like, when you don't trust somebody, like, by default, we should be not agnostic. By default, we should have like an antagonistic view towards these things. But the reason why we're antagonistic is because we know that they're important and we know that they can do well, right? That's why we have an antagonistic view towards them. If we have a friend and they're acting stupid and we're giving them shit for it, you know, it's because we think that they can do better, right? If you've got somebody who's truly toxic in your life, you know, what is the advice? It's not like, well, you need to really go after. It's just cut them out of your life completely. Ignore them, like, right? So when you're antagonistic toward things, because you know they can do better. I'm not saying that we should have like a blind trust towards corporations or institutions or anything like that, but we should like acknowledge that they give us a lot of value, and then you're antagonistic in a way that you want them to do better, and that's it. But it also has to start from this area of not fundamentally thinking that all of them and every person who's a part of them are out to like destroy and murder and kill everybody, right? One of the things that you said when you came to this conversation is you appreciated the fact that I'm not like assuming bad intent from you, and I don't think you're assuming bad intent from me. But when we start from there, for every single person working in the NHS or HHS or every single person working in the FDA, I mean, it kind of fucks everything right at the start, right?
Sure. Yeah. And I don't think of these broader institutional organizations as individuals running them, right? At least my thinking is they are kind of a colony organization that's got bureaucratic responsibility. And so I think you're getting like dangerously close to saying that people resisting the Democrats are hoping for better from them, right? Like leftists.
Yeah, but it's resisting in a way that you're still with them at the end of the day, right? It's to quote that, I lean a lot into this. Like,
then that's not real resistance.
No,
if you go like,
it
dude,
is.
Hold on. Give me a sec. If you say, dude, I want you to be better, right? And I'm gonna fight you on this fucking day if you're not better, right? And that day comes and the dude shows up and goes, all right, let's get down. And you go like, nah, dude, I was with you all along. You're not really resisting them, right?
It's okay. There's a saying from old Middle Eastern culture. Okay, it has to do with balanced opposition and who you fight in a war against other tribes in the Middle East. Okay, and the quote is, "Me against my brother and I against my cousin, and my cousin and I against the world." Okay, so if you're in the Democratic Party and you're talking to other Democrats and you want to fight with other Democrats, then you do that. You fight in the primaries. You critique them when it comes to policy. You try to hold them accountable as much as you can. But when you're looking outwards and it's Republicans attacking you, right? Well, no, you side with the Democrats.
How do you hold them accountable if not with your money?
In primaries, you don't vote for the other team.
Well, what about when there isn't a primary like this
When is there not a well, because we have an incumbent, but there are House races, there are Senate races, there are local races.
We had an incumbent, and then
okay,
Biden
then in that case, well, so here's the issue, and this is why it worked this way in the Middle East. If you don't want to play by that same set of rules, that's fine. You die and you lose because the other side is playing by that set of rules. If you want to betray your family, if you want to betray your brother, or you want to betray your cousin, then you're free to do so. The other side's not going to, though, and they will never betray their brother or their cousin, and their families will always dominate your families. You will never survive.
So the only kind of resistance that you think is useful at all is resistance with no ultimatum.
No,
right?
No. You can.
If you don't, then we will kind of statement, right?
No. You fight in places like the primaries. These are where you fight inside the party, right? And then once the primary is over, then you have the candidate, and then you fight against the outsiders, and that's it. It can't be like, well, I might side with the outsiders at any given point in time. Do you think Republicans are ever doing that? They're never doing that. So you always are losing. You understand, like, it's a simple game theory thing. You're always losing against another team who has allegiance to their family or their in-group, right?
I mean, isn't the Trump administration and its broad influence over the last 12 years kind of like proof of a lot of infighting on the right and shit?
Yeah, but when it comes time to support the candidate, they're unified around that 100%. It's not even close. There's so much unity around that. Like, how big of a political force are the never Trumpers, right? They're like nothing. They have their
not
word.
At all,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then
I maybe would have argued for that pre-election, but after, the writing's on the wall. Yeah, everybody that even has proclivities towards Republicanism showed up and just kind of checked the box for T.
Exactly.
Right.
But look how many people showed up and voted just for Trump. They didn't even vote down ballot. They were just like, "Fuck it, I'll support Trump," and then they leave. Right?
Well, what do they call those?
Bullet ballots.
I learned it from your bullet ballots. I was watching your stream with that guy. That was an interesting one. Yeah. Do we know how many of those existed in these swing states?
Supposedly a lot, but I would have to check. But like, how many people? Like, here's a question, right? How many people on the leftists that were saying things like, this is a genocidal president regime, I'm not going to support them, blah, 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 right? And then they didn't vote. They didn't tell their audiences to vote. How many people on the right, I've read articles now I've shown my audience articles by Matt Walsh, by Ben Shapiro, by Glenn Beck. These people who are like, I will never vote for Donald Trump. And today, these are some of Donald Trump's biggest cheerleaders. They're not withholding their vote, right? The Daily Wire.
A lot of these people got skin in the game too, though, like real money in the game. So they see them.
It doesn't matter. Sure,
right?
I mean, you can say that, but regardless of what it is, it's a politically effective strategy. They're unified around a candidate, and none of the crying and bitching and moaning they did before. None of that mattered.
We got to get better at spreading money around. You know what I mean?
I mean, if that's the view that you want to take, if it just comes down to that, then fine. But I mean,
maybe it does. I mean, well, maybe it doesn't just come down to that, but maybe it does come down a little bit to that, right? Like, would you rather have, because like, okay, Kamala outspent Trump like 3-1 or whatever, right?
I think just her campaign did. That doesn't include super PAC spending, but yeah.
Sure, but like just the campaign, right? It was a billion and a, or what was it, $1.5 billion, something like that.
Yeah, they outspent the Trump campaign. It was 3-1. Yeah,
It was fucking insane, right? And how much of that money got sprinkled around to like celebrities that didn't push anybody to vote for anybody, right? And
I'm not sure, but yeah,
and big kind of like hype events that really weren't going to turn out fucking votes. They're just going to turn out a crowd,
okay.
right? So well, my question is like, and this kind of circles back to when I called in, is like you being a guy that, and I would really like to see it happen too. You kind of taking over like a house campaign in a couple of years or whatever, when there's another batch of house elections, midterm elections. How would you do that differently if you were going to spread that money around? Right.
I don't know if it's about spreading the money around. The money comes because of what you do in the media. Like the Daily Wire and all these people who have like financial interest. That financial interest isn't just that they're getting paid by the Republican Party or they're getting paid by Donald Trump. It's that they're making money by appealing to that audience, broadly speaking, and then they watch them, and that's where the money comes from.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess spreading the money around is like kind of like a shady term that you're trying to avoid. I'm not acting like greasing palms here. I'm saying
that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Okay. More like.
But here's a difference in kind of like for spreading the money, right? On the right, if you say I don't like Donald Trump, I'm not going to support him, you get destroyed. Nobody wants to watch you, and all the other content creators will shit on you. On the left, I might have legitimately been the only person in my media sphere, right, outside of, I'm hoping that like Pod Save America and these other guys were supporting the candidate, but like when I go on shows, even with other left-leaning people, and I'm like, hell yeah, I'm riding with Biden, or absolutely, I'm voting for Harris 100%. I'm like, it's like cringe. Like it's cringe that I even support the Democratic Party, or it's cringe that I support the establishment, or it's cringe that I support the candidate, right? Nobody on the left is excitedly or enthusiastically supporting the candidate, whereas on the right, that is, the support for Donald Trump was like enforced. That was a socially and financially enforced mechanism, right? The two examples I bring up are when Rittenhouse said he was going to vote for a libertarian, the whole MAGA world came down on him. When
they flipped on him.
Yeah, when Joe Rogan said he was like supporting RFK, the whole world flipped on him, right? They enforce that so much. We don't have that on our side at all. There is no support for the party. In fact, it's cooler to not support the party.
Right. So do you think, guys, so you got Hassan up on your screen as we talk, or you did earlier at least. Do you, so I kind of follow you on social media and stuff too, and I see a lot of people shitting on you and you responding to them about Hassan. I don't really understand, and I don't think you need to bring me up to speed on it because I don't care. Like the whole adpocalypse shit that's being slung around and this, that, and the other thing, right? But in terms of your kind of history with Hassan, I'm a little bit knowledgeable on that. Do you think it has any bearing on who you are as a streamer that Hassan is out there shit talking you? Do you feel like it's
of course it's massively impactful of me in a negative way? Yeah.
But do you think that you're engaging with it stops it or stokes it?
I have to engage with it. It stops it. Like I have to put out responses to. There are certain things that you can ignore if they're small enough, or if it's just like fucking like personal whatever dumb shit.
Right.
But but for a major content creator like this, I have to say stuff because there are a lot of communities that are by default poisoned against me, and now Ethan, because of things they've heard from Hassan. And if I don't have anything out there, it's not so much that I'm fighting it. It's that like my fans or people that like me, they need things to fight it with. And if I don't say or do anything, then you're kind of just like, oh, well, if that thing's not even responding, that's like, what the fuck am I supposed to say? So yeah, you have to participate in that. You have to.
You have to.
Yeah. Because Hassan is participating in this 24/7, right? He's bringing up Reddit threads, he's bringing up YouTube videos, he's like posting about it in Discord. Like his fans are working overtime to do reputation rehab for him.
That's exhausting.
But it's effective. And it works.
And that's just one angle of this, right? Like you probably have multiple vectors of this type of aggressive anti-fan kind of infiltration into your community and shit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You're saying that like directly meeting all of that is the only way to do it.
Not all of it. I mean, you have to pick and choose, but you can't just ignore all of it.
Right. I mean, obviously there's going to be a hive of like orbiters around Hassan that you can just fucking functionally ignore. Right. But him himself, you kind of got to counter him, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Although also me versus Hassan is also kind of like emblematic of maybe like a larger fight as well, and that Hassan kind of represents this, you know, the pro-Gaza, Palestinian, like anti-genocide rhetoric, anti-party, pro-leftist, anti-democratic establishment like movement, and then I kind of represent, you know, I don't even know what the fuck I represent at the moment, but like kind of this more institutional cuck, you know, supports the party.
Well, that's why I like you. That's why, even as a guy that maybe is like politically a little different than you or whatever, that you would want to like kind of maybe throw out as detrimental to the broader democratic movement, right? I like you because you're willing to say like, you know, hey, I don't know what I represent. Because it's shifted over time. As I've watched you over time, you know, what you represent, I think it has been mostly defined by how people have opposed you.
I mean, I wouldn't agree with that at all, but I understand why that perception exists of me. But
well, sure, but yeah, I meant no disrespect to that.
No, I understand. Yeah.
As a guy that, you know, I've watched you and been aware of you, but I don't watch every fucking stream, right? So, but I do watch the highlight stuff that you put out, sanctioned and non-sanctioned. I don't know what channels are yours not anymore, but there's quite a few of them. Anyway, do you think it's going to be detrimental because of how low these people are willing to go to you being the more public face of an actual Democratic campaign?
I don't know. That's partially what I like want to trial, right? Like I was a lot more amicable to that belief prior to the election, but like when Donald Trump can sink so low on things that are actually horrible, like this is a guy who is civilly liable for sexual assault. Okay.
Right.
The idea that like, wow, this guy said, you know, he made an edgy joke, or, you know, he said the N-word before. So this is like, we can't ever, like, that's just fucking stupid. I think that we need to kind of move past that as a party. And I think I'm unwilling to just sit by and like kind of play ball with that idea anymore. Because it seems like it doesn't impact the right literally at all. So, and like, and people on the left have tried this and it doesn't work. But like what was that N-word compilation of Joe Rogan going around that had literally no impact whatsoever? Like, it was just stupid. Like that needs to be given up.
Well, it had no impact on his credibility with the right, because they don't give a fuck about it.
It had no impact on his credibility with literally anybody.
I mean, there were a lot more leftists, like people like me, right, listening to Joe Rogan as infotainment prior to him becoming like this big banner waving Trump dick sucker, right? Like back when he was more of just like a bro dude that would, you know, hey man, let's talk about fucking multi-dimensional spacecraft or whatever with a specialist. Like that type of shit. When he started this, I'm a Trumpist, I'm a right-wing guy, that a lot of people walked away from him, I think. A lot of leftists. I know I did. I was like, I'm not gonna sit and listen to this fucking shit.
I don't know about that. He still like consistently hits like #1 for like podcasts and shit, doesn't he? Like,
well, didn't he just consolidate the right around him by throwing up the flag? He's like, yeah, I'm all into Trump, man. And then they.
Oh, like, I mean, regardless, I mean, he still picked up fans. I mean, I guess, yeah.
Sure, yeah. I think my argument would be there's probably way more of a shift right in his audience than anything.
Yeah, possibly. But is there a shift right because left-leaning people left and right-leaning people joined, or because his audience started to shift with him? My guess is it's going to be a combination of the both, but a lot of it is going to be the the last part where a lot of people are started to shift with him. Like if as much as I love my audience and I think they do better than most audiences, like if I became an avowed Nazi tomorrow, I could bring some of them with me. Like I know I could.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So I mean, like, so Joe Rogan has definitely influenced these people moving as well, and it's not like he's moved.
Well, I don't mean to. Yeah, I don't mean to bring this up, but I was, you know, like you engaging with Nick Fuentes, I thought was like some of my favorite stuff that you did, because you guys are so ideologically opposed, and seeing you try to have like a normal conversation, but you catch so much fucking shit for that.
Sure.
And I just hate that we've reached the point now where you and Hassan can't be in the fucking room.
Yeah, but remember, that's his fault,
retarded.
Right? That's his fault. That's his fault.
Well,
is it?
It
is.
Okay. So you are open to talk to him anytime, right?
I've said a million times, like me and Hassan and Vosh could, Even if we were doing antagonistic content, it would be amazing content. These are million view videos every single debate. It would be crazy. And if we were doing synergistic content, bro, me and Hassan and Vosh having like a competition between like how many people we could get to like post pictures of voting at booths or whatever, like the amount of synergy there would be unbelievable. We're the 3 largest, I think, like of all like the live streamers. I'm pretty sure we're the 3 largest live streamers for politics on the internet. That like not just like podcasting, but I think it's me, Vosh, and Hassan. All of us are on the left, but like we don't do any content together. None of us do. That's crazy. So I like, what are you gonna? Yeah.
It's legit stupid, actually. So I'm like, I thought that, and honestly, I'm glad that you cleared that up, because I thought it was kind of like this mutual, like, fuck them, I'm kind of done with them, I'm not going to help signal boost them kind of mentality.
Well, no, the issue is that both of them have lied about me so much they can't have me on or show any of my content because of the lies that they've told about me, right? When I criticize Vosh or Hassan, like right now, like I'm watching this whole thing, right? I'll watch this whole interview with him and I'll critique what he says and I think it's dumb. But when they talk about me, and now you can see Hassan do this against Ethan, so it's not just me being personal, they never bring up the original videos. They have to build us up, they have to build me up to be this insane caricature of evil person. Like that Nick Fuentes thing that you said, if Hassan and Vosh wanted to argue with me or bring up like, I think that Destiny platforming Fuentes in this way, I just don't think it was responsible. I don't think that the debates or whatever were worth it. I don't, whatever. Then fine. That, you know what? I would engage with that, and I could even see like there are arguments on both sides. These are challenging decisions to make, 100%, and there are good arguments on both sides of that. But when the debate is just, well, I think that he's a secret Nazi, and he's buddies with Nazis because he wants to promote Nazis and he wants them to be famous because he is a Nazi. It's like, okay, what the fuck? What am I supposed to do with that? Like, Jesus Christ! Like,
can I tell you the truth about it? I think you platforming Nick Fuentes had more to do with him currently like botting viewers on Kick or wherever the fuck he's at and having basically no influence and just being kind of like a meme and not a political force that has a seat at the presidential table, right?
Maybe. I think I would argue that Kanye is what Fuentes is.
Well, yeah, that definitely didn't help. But your interactions with him painted pretty stark fucking like lines for anybody with a fucking brain without doing it all super aggressively, right?
Maybe.
So it probably brought a lot of people over, I would imagine, or maybe because like, look, dude.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, that's what Hassan does accuse me of that. He says that my whole audience were like ex-gripers and ex-Nazis while simultaneously saying I didn't convert anybody. So who knows, you know?
I mean, I don't know, dude. I trust me. I spent some time kind of deep diving into these right-wing media figures when they were ascendant, right? And I know a Groiper chat, and your chat is not a Groiper chat, bro.
Yeah, I know.
It's so like, it's close, not like it's really isn't. And so like any idea that you interacting with that dude and then him being a shambles right now, right? Like if you interacting with him was so horrible and radioactive, then wouldn't he be just like ascendant? Would he be sitting next to like with a cabinet appointment or some fucking horrible nightmare scenario, right? But it was the opposite. Like those videos you did to him, like they humanized him, but they also like dismantled his worldview pretty fucking solidly, right?
Maybe. I think hope for some people, yeah.
I think a lot of people moved out of that audience because of it, right? And so it's just stupid that you guys, I don't even know, like the lies that you say that these guys have told about you, how much of it is about your personal life shit?
Well, Hassan has moved a lot more into that now because he's gotten bored of, I guess, lying about my professional life. But I mean,
so it's like, man, that is the stuff that I don't know. Like, why even fucking engage, bro? I can't even imagine somebody having
I don't usually engage with like the weird personal accusations. There's no point in it. I'm like, well, I'm not going to.
That's the type of shit that I was going to tell you, man. As a normie guy that's not all in your audience all the time, right? When I see criticism of you, what is it, bro? It's cuck. Oh, he got a divorce. Like nobody's ever been fucking divorced before. You know what I mean? It's just like fucking retarded, puritanical shit floats to the top when it comes to criticism of you. Right?
Yeah, sure. But I mean, like, I can't, what am I supposed to engage with it and say I didn't actually get a divorce or like scream like, I'm not a cuckold? Like, there's no point in engaging with it.
When these dudes go that low, why would you want to ever be in the fucking room?
Sure, but like, you know what I mean?
This is
so what you're talking about now. I agree with you, but this circles back, and I'm going to harp on this a lot. I'm sorry, because this is like my thing now. A lot of this goes back to the media environments, right? Like the media environments just need to be different. Like, so, like for instance, Hassan is about to do 2 hours on this Pod Save America show, which is what I'm watching, and I don't know if the host knows about any of that. So he's not. So Hassan isn't held accountable. He's got like a Trump-like media environment, right? So Hassan gets to come on and basically do his whole little like mask on, pretending to be a lib shit that he pretended with me while he was leeching off my career at the start of his streaming career. He's going to go and do that on all these shows, and none of these people do research or call him out on it. So, I mean, like, what? There's nothing. You're powerless in that regard, right? If somebody's willing to platform somebody without doing even the slightest amount of research for what the person is engaged in, like,
then why not just excise him from your fucking content, right?
Because he's big enough that it's not like he needs me talking about him to boost his career. He has his own.
But I'm saying, like, you're talking about there needs to be a unification on the left behind one big streaming personality, right?
No. Hold on, just to be clear, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there needs to at least be like uniform support for the party. I don't think there has to be like a Joe Rogan.
Well, then that excludes Hassan. That excludes Vosh.
Yep. Vosh.
Well, maybe not Vosh.
But Hassan,
Vosh has changed his tune a little bit in post-election, but
well, even pre-election, as much as I hate to give credit to him because he'll never give me credit for literally anything because he's a disgusting subhuman degenerate fuck. I'm pretty sure Vosh has always been pretty like you need to vote for the Democrats. I think he's been.
He's very harm reduction guy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get it. But you're saying Hassan openly opposes the party, needs to be jettisoned.
Yeah, those types of people for sure.
Those types. Oh shit.
Turkish people. No, I'm just kidding. Anybody that
I feel like there's like a red dot on my forehead right now.
Well,
don't snipe me, dude. Don't snipe me, bro. Look, listen.
Democrats have, it's just like they don't get like pre-existing conditions. I understand for if you're relatively healthy and I'm relatively healthy, it's not a big deal. But like, bro, I knew so many people who were enslaved to their jobs because they couldn't leave because Americans get insurance through their jobs, and like if you've got a big pre-existing condition that requires you to get ordinary like medication, you're fucked. You can never ever leave. Dude, you're just fucked forever. And like the ACA and the pre-existing condition shit changes so much, and it's so popular now that even Donald Trump wants to take credit for for pre-existing conditions. And the fact that like the Democrats get no credit for any of this is just so crazy to me.
So can I tell you what broke my brain on the ACA?
Yeah,
I bet you could probably guess, right?
I don't know. Was that public option or lack of?
It was that late night fucking session where it went from being a public option legislation that probably would have fundamentally changed the nature of healthcare in this country for better and for always, and it became a mandate to private insurance providers who, I don't know what your experience is on the private insurance market. They fucking suck. Uniformly suck. And they are rewarded for sucking. Unless you found one that, because dude, I've hopped around, bro. I've had all kinds of different insurance.
I understand that like it's popular to like, because when people have problems, like for instance, if you ask people like, how do you feel about airlines? Everybody's going to have their least favorite airline or reason why they hate them, but it's because they're talking about a bad experience. But like, there are tons of people in the United States that have health insurance, and despite how complicated and fucking weird the whole process is, they get their medication every month. It's covered by their insurance, and they don't think about it. Like, there's plenty of people on Medicare, off Medicare, with private. That's reducing
the experience, bro. That's reducing the experience. That's reducing the experience down to like the base output of it, but the acrimony people go through to get their medications, get a diagnosis properly, get to the right specialist, sit through the waiting list. It's more than that.
Yeah,
it's
it
not
sucks.
Just,
I'm not saying. Hold on. I'm not saying that it's. Yes. I'm not saying that it's the best. I'm just saying that there are issues for sure. But like for the most part, most people in the United States are not like just dying on the street. They can't get medication, and it's like fucked. And there are issues as well. And I know we don't like to talk about them, but you better believe there are crazy issues with other countries as well, even with like all their socialized health insurance. Whether we're talking about insane wait lists or stupid ways to book hospital appointments, or like all like these are things that I've watched. You know, my ex-wife, I watched her do this in fucking Sweden when it came to like, oh, our STD tests are free, but you have to like call in by phone to make a hyper specific appointment, and like the wait times might be retarded. Or like when we were doing immigration, there was literally one hospital in the entire country of Sweden that would do the appointments for immigrating to the United States. We had to take a train over to Gothenburg to do it because there was only one medical professional in the whole country that would do these appointments. And it's just like, I'm not saying that the U.S. is better, and I do think that having at least a public option would be better, but I'm just saying it's not all sunshine and rainbows for everybody else, and it's not like our system is like fucked every single way from top to bottom. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. There are people who are not being, but there's a lot of people who are just right on the ragged edge of falling through the cracks in the system, bro.
Sure.
And going through a lot of insane fucking horseshit.
There are,
just
but
to
I'm
get
just
a
saying that these
medication
people
they need.
exist in a lot of places. In the NHS, bro, when I was over in Britain talking to people, every single well, I was in Wales. Every single person I talked to, you know, we talk about how expensive shit is over here and how, you know, everybody, like the administrative burden and the costs are wasted everywhere. You go over to Britain and there's like nurses and people doing these insane jobs for their medical system, and these people make like 32,000 quid a year, or these people make like no money at all. And they're like, bro, like I know the US has problems, but I look at what traveling nurses get paid during COVID in the US and I'm like, holy fuck, get me the fuck out of here. Like I would gladly go live in the United States if I didn't have to get the fucking compensation that you get for working as part of the NHS. Just like insanely horrible pay for some of these people. Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah. But
you know,
not to defend the US system. I'm just saying it's pros and cons for everything.
No, there are definitely pros and cons, and I understand that. There are pros. I think the problem that I have with the US system above all is its multi-tiered nature. The fact that a guy like you that's got millions of dollars, you're not going to have any problem getting any kind of fucking medication that you need, lickety fucking split.
Sure. Although that is true as well. That's true in a lot of European. That's true in a lot of European systems as well. They all have multi-payer. Like even in Canada, you have multi-payer systems, right?
Yeah. I'm not glazing the European or Canadian model. I'm an idealist, so you're gonna have to meet me where I am on that until I decide I'm not gonna do that anymore, right?
Sure.
But I'm just saying from that perspective, there's a lot of fucking bullshit hurdles between people just getting shit they need to live. And there's a lot of fucking bullshit that doesn't need to be there, bro. So as I was, you know, going to the doctor, I've been losing weight recently and trying to get healthy and stuff. And as I was going to the doctor, instead of them going like, well, they were happy that I was losing weight, but you know what their response was? Would you like Ozempic? And it's like, why the fuck am I getting upsold a trendy fucking, because I'm not diabetic, right? So there's no point to me being on this drug. But every time I go see my fucking doctor, would you like Ozempic? And I'm losing like 20, 30, 40 pounds in between doctor's appointments in some cases, right?
Sure.
And,
I mean, I can't speak to your individual experience, but I mean, like, and I can't speak to what your doctors have told you, but I mean, like, depending on the person's weight, like losing weight is literally the most effective way to reduce so much.
No, I get it, but I'm doing it at the pace they tell me is the most healthy thing, right?
Yeah.
Without the Ozempic, but they want me on this shit fucking desperately, bro.
Sure. I can't speak to that, but yeah.
Why? I know you can't speak to it, but it's just like, if it's happening to me, who else is getting upsold this garbage? Because I'm telling you, here's what I know about Ozempic and drugs like it. If you're a fat fuck, it shifts about 35 pounds of water weight off of your ass.
Well, and no, it reduces your appetite, so you eat less. It's not just water weight.
Most people that are so catastrophically overweight are going to eat right through that reduction in appetite. You think people are eating because they're hungry?
Yeah.
When they're that big?
Yeah.
No.
What do you mean
they're not.
No?
Well, I mean, we could get into a whole fucking talk about because I know you've probably never been a fat dude, right?
Not super fat. I've been overweight, but
I've been pretty. So you want my fat credentials? I'm 6'1", and the highest I ever weighed was 370 pounds.
Okay.
Okay, so that's pretty fucking fat, right?
Yeah.
Can I tell you something about being fat, bro? Sure. When I was big and not really trying, because now that I'm losing weight, I eat very definable meals, and hunger is a thing that I experience.
Okay.
Right. When I was that big, dude, I forgot what fucking being hungry felt like. I wasn't eating because I was hungry. Right? You understand?
I understand what you're saying, but your experience, I think, is unique there. I think that a lot of people that are mass, I promise you it is. Ozempic clinically, like just if I go by research alone, like Ozempic and even amphetamines reduce weight because it reduces appetite. Like people are hungry, they eat, they think about food a lot. And like it's a huge, like it's a psychological issue and it's like a physical issue. The idea that you never thought about food
I think the psychological issue is undertreated and the physical issue is overtreated. Then let's put it that way.
Okay.
Because I think that it was way more about me using food as a comforting mechanism against psychological pain, right? Than it was me like, God damn, I'm hungry. Let me get a fucking third hamburger for the day. You know what I mean? No.
Sure, but if you were psychologically comforted, it's not like you're in a position to just start like dieting a ton, right?
Well, hold on. if you're psychologically comforted by food,
by anything. It's not like you're all of a sudden just like having a healthier like daily intake of calories.
what do you mean? What do you mean?
Like when you become a
How
certain,
do you think it works?
when you,
So
yeah,
like,
as you
you want
gain,
me to
as you
walk you
gain
through-
weight, as you gain weight, right? Your body is
Yeah.
used to maintaining a certain level of calories in, and you have an appetite that's reflective of like, I haven't had enough calories today, or I haven't had enough
No.
stuff that feels like calories today. Okay.
No, I mean, not like I'm telling you, man. Like, I think you might. And look, dude, I understand. Like, and it's maybe not an experience you need to know much about. I'm glad you've never been fat, you know. But there's a lot of fat folks, and I'm just telling you, like, we speak to one another. We know, and it's very little. Is there a fat guy? Like, they might tell you that to deflect pain, right? So if you were coming at me, right? Let's say that we were on that Jubilee shit, and you were doing a big panel, and I sat down, and you're like, "Hey, why are you so fat?" You know what I mean? I'd probably go like, "'Cause I'm hungry." You know, if I didn't want to talk about my psychological pain, my physical pain, my horrible addiction, and bad, well, historically bad and addictive relationship with food, right? So like, yeah, you might hear that from people if you're just going on self-reporting, right? You might hear like, "I'm just hungry all day," because they don't want to tell like the dude doing the fucking survey, like, my mom didn't love me, you know, or whatever it was. You know, they don't want to do that. My mom tisted my tipples, you know, when I was young, and that makes me eat, you know, whatever it is. But that's at the heart. You see people that are catastrophically fat, right? You can almost guarantee that motherfucker isn't just dealing with like, "I don't know how to stop eating because I'm so hungry." Like, there's some other shit going on, Desmond.
So
I'm letting you
have we
know.
just gotten more traumatized, and that's why there are so many people that are obese or overweight? Or
I think that psychological trauma plays a bigger role in the obesity epidemic than any kind of like physical desire for chicken nuggets ever did.
okay, if I had to guess or peg it as a percentage, I would say things like psychological trauma or whatever are probably like 5 to 10% of it, and I would say availability of ultra processed foods are probably like 90% of it. That would be my guess, but we'll probably just never agree
I think
on that.
I think that type of kind of establishment level thinking is why people keep getting fatter and fatter.
That's fine, but I think my feeling is validated through every single society level empirical study, every single thing in drug therapy, every single thing in the world is going to support my view on that, and I don't think there's a single broad study that would support your view on that. But I mean, like, I don't know how else to.
Establishment thinking, man. Come on.
I mean, I can show you
There
a
is
drug
a
like Ozempic that has
psychological-
like huge validation for reducing weight. You can't show me like a therapeutic thing that has been like massively effective in reducing weight.
I can, yeah.
I don't think so. I think if there was like
You
a
don't
form
think
of therapy or something that like had a huge successful outcome for people reducing it, I think there'd be a lot more hype around it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I guess I won't tell you about my personal psychological journey because we're talking statistics, you know.
Well, I mean, at the epidemiological level, that's all we could talk about, right? I'm sure there might be
Sure.
things that work for some individuals.
I'm not an
but
epidemiologist, though, bro. We're just talking, you know.
Sure.
So I'm just saying that, like, my experience and the experience of people that I have known, a lot of my family has obesity problems. Right? It's just kind of like a genetic marker in my family, right? And so I got a lot of fatties in the fam. And I think that there is psychological like trauma at the base of a lot of those unhealthy relationships with food.
That might be
Right.
the case, but if if there are certain types of food that wasn't available, that trauma wouldn't play out in the form of like people getting obese.
Yeah, are you saying that we like should get rid of McDonald's and shit?
Or tax the fuck out of sugar or like more processed foods or something, yeah.
I see you ordering McDonald's and shit, you bastard. You bougie fuck.
Yeah, but
like
I'm
ordering
not
McDonald's.
obese or overweight.
Right, but you could become obese and you could suffer some of the hallmarks of obesity from eating greasy processed
If I started
food.
to overeat it, yeah. But I mean, like, I'm aware of how much I eat per day. Like,
Sure. Well, I get it. I get it. Well, you have a normal relationship with food, I think.
Maybe, but if I mean, like if I started to become obese or overweight, like there are things that I would do to try to, like I probably wouldn't eat that food as much anymore. I would be more aware of it. But also, I'm not obese. Like once you become overweight or you become more overweight, it becomes really, really, really hard to lose that, right? Yeah.
Well, I've just, you know, I'm on, like I said, I've lost a lot of weight, and I'm on, you know, my way to a healthy weight, and a lot of it was changing how I eat, right? And so you're absolutely right about that. It's the psychological journey, getting to the point where you can decouple your feelings from the food, right?
Sure.
That's all I'm.
But I bet like
about.
changing how you eat. My guess is if you're losing weight, a lot of that is moving away from like the super ultra processed food to stuff that's a little bit more satiating as well. Yeah,
well,
for sure.
I stopped eating meat. I do like a pescatarian thing now, right? I was always kind of grossed out by meat, and so I gravitated to the most like processed forms of it, like the hamburgers and the chicken and the pizza. So I just don't, you know, indulge in that type of food anymore.
Okay.
And that changed the whole way I eat. So yeah, but
Sure.
you know, that getting to the point of that is, you know, was tough for me, is all I'm saying. There was like a whole psychological journey that had to happen before I could decouple my feelings from my eating enough to even institute that type of dietary change. That's
Sure.
all I'm saying.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. Hi, what's up?
Hello.
Hello, I'm sorry. I know you moved on from the Ukraine stuff, but I have been summoned. So, Mr. Bonelli,
Uh-oh.
you should do research on Holodomor because it is recognized as genocide by your own country.
Okay.
I know you're not the best, barometers of truth, but yeah, Germany does, France does, Poland does, Italy does,
Correct.
basically everyone of value recognizes it as genocide. You are correct, though, that people debate still whether the famine itself was intentional. That is debated. By the actions that they took when the famine happened are not debated already at this time and age. It used to be, but not anymore, because of the refusal to accept food from foreign aid, because of the mass executions of people who try to escape, particularly in Ukraine.
The blocking of
Yeah,
foreign aid as well.
I don't think I reject any of the facts around that. I'm not sure in terms of it being a genocide, but I'm not saying it's not. I haven't done the research there, so I'm not comfortable like saying like, oh, 100%, because I just haven't done any of the
but
reading.
I wish you would, you know. I have sent you the
and there's
map
a million
as well.
other, I know there's a billion other topics I need to research as well, but yeah, but anyway.
It's the second time I'm catching you, okay?
Uh-oh, okay.
So oh, indeed. So yeah, that's what happened. Also, the mass Russification that happened afterwards. People also bring up Kuban, which is a region in Russia that was also heavily affected by a lot of people died there, and people bring it up as an argument that are uneducated or are they doing Russian propaganda. They would be like, oh, in that region also many people died, and they also were not prohibited to leave the area to find food anywhere else. But the truth is that the absolute majority of Kuban population were Ukrainians. So that's the argument against them, not for them, because the only region in Russia that was subjugated to such losses of life and prohibited from living was also 75 majority Ukrainian, and most of them spoke Ukrainian, but after half of them died and they have been replaced by Russians, and the schools have been Russified, of course they started speaking Russian and things like that. So that is by people like is recognized by even by Lemkin himself, who created the term genocide. So yeah, there's that. Just wanted to indulge to it. I just really want you to do that. Is that medication you're taking? Why?
Yeah.
Well, take that and do a Holodomor thing. You'll be so good at it. You'll be as good as you always are when you have the knowledge. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Promise on stream right now.
I promise I'll add it to my list of things to get to.
That's good enough.
Okay.
Works for me. Yeah.
I don't have the political expertise to make a genuine call on this, but I believe her. I think she's right about this.
I do know my history. Okay.
See?
Yeah.
See, I'm willing to I'm willing to go with UkrainianAna is right about this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with any of the underlying facts. I mean, even more what was said, like even people that were trying to flee places that were experiencing starvation were shot and killed en masse And then when those same people turned to cannibalism, the Soviet troops would come in and kill them en masse. So, and then obviously it was an opportunity for Russification, for Russia to ship in a bunch of their own citizens and everything. So, like, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with any of the underlying facts. I'm just not sure about the, for what it qualifies as genocide or not or whatever. But yeah,
genocide is also like there has to be like some sort of state intentionality to it,
yeah,
and there was on the law in Soviet Union that was made. It's like in papers and shit. It's called a Fifth Wit Law, I think, in English, or something of the sort. I know how it's called in Russian. I don't know how it's called in English exactly. But point is that that was a law on the books that said that you should shoot people who try to steal food in Ukraine specific.
yeah.
So that's something that you can attribute to government.
And some of that food they were trying to
policy.
steal was literally being taken from them. It was requisitioned by Soviet
Moscow,
troops to take it up to like mainland Russia from the Ukrainians themselves. So yeah.
Yes. And many people, unfortunately,
It
didn't
sounds
know
like
it was happening.
It sounds like you're ready. You should make a call on this.
Well, I'm aware of the facts of the matter. I don't know whether it qualifies as genocide or not, because a lot of that's just a thing. But yeah, I'm aware of all the facts of the matter. But also, it also doesn't. It's not like a super relevant thing because nobody's being persuaded one way or another about anything going on today based on that, because people are like they won't agree with the underlying facts, right? Like if you were to argue with Tanky, they're not going to agree with all the underlying facts and say, well, I'm not sure if it's a genocide. The Tankies will say that like I don't think that it was a totally natural famine. It happened like nobody knew it was going to happen. It was a mistake, and the Soviets made a mistake.
History,
yeah, it's all going to be bullshit. They're not even going to agree on the underlying facts. Yeah.
If you talk to an average Russian person right now, they will say the same. The worst thing they will say is that it was a mistake or something. Like, that it was like they say, what they actually say? That's what I taught in school, ironically enough, is that it was sort of like a miscalculation. Yeah, that's what they say. So like a miscalculation because of the industrialization policy that was happening, and and that's all it was, a tragic mistake.
Sure.
That's basically how. Tankies usually don't say tragic because they like Ukrainians dying, so they just say it was, it never happened, or it was like, something like that.
Yeah, because one of the benefits that for Chinese tankies and for Soviet tankies is they get to say that it was just because they were trying to industrialize, and therefore they can excuse literally every single bad behavior of the regime as a result of that.
Yeah. Basically, or say it was worth it, or it wasn't targeted specifically as well because of they will usually bring up the Kuban example, which, like I said, is quite funny because it nullifies actually if they knew what they were talking about, or maybe they know, they just use it as a as a propaganda tool for their side, I suppose.
Sure.
Hello,
I see Loaderbox jumping. I'm gonna use yours real quick. 1 second, back.
Yeah, just come in to counter all the Kulak disinformation in here.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah.
Wait a minute.
No,
was I led down the wrong?
No. So
I'm
okay,
following the vibes.
I'm probably going to say this with a lot less conviction than Anna because I still have to finish my research on it. So I'm probably just going to say some dumb shit now, so it motivates me to finish. Okay. First of all, using Lemkin's testimony doesn't really mean anything because Lemkin's definition of genocide was radically different from the one that was actually agreed by the UN. So by Lemkin's terms, the Holodomor and what happened in Ukraine and what happened to the rural population would have been genocide even if no one starved, right? Even if there was no famine, because he saw cultural destruction and the targeting of intellectuals and poets and academics and doctors and all that. He saw that as genocide, right? Yeah.
He said that's part of it, yeah.
I think the general, the only, maybe you can tell me about this. The only steelman that I hear from, like, I guess maybe non-tankies and just like, I don't even know, people like, I can't even remember their names, never mind. But the idea that with Stalin, I guess the contention is that Stalin, whenever he wanted a group killed, generally, he would just say it. He would write it very clearly. He would sign the order. He'd say a million different things about how fucking subhuman they are, and then he would go and do it, right? But with the Holodomor, it's always like some kind of roundabout way that you get to it. So with the smoking gun policy, which was supposed to be about stopping people who are starving from fleeing their villages, right? That's like the smoking gun policy for, what was it called? Preventing the mass exodus of peasants who are starving. But I think the rationale that was given by Stalin when he signed it wasn't to say like, oh, I want to kill the Ukrainians and all that. It was because they believed that they were stopping people from taking diseases that they were accumulating in those areas and spreading it across the other villages.
You know, if your barometer of whether there was genocide is a person who committed it saying it, then only Hitler will be qualified, or maybe Milosevic from Serbia. But most people committing shit like that don't actually announce that, and neither did Soviets. They were a little less retarded than,
Well, then
yeah.
why did Stalin announce his intentions with other people, right? Like,
Well, he did announce his intentions. There are documents. You can dig it up. I can send you stuff if you want. I think a person actually sent you a bunch of stuff. Lucy, she called. I think she did. She talked with you a little
yeah, I've
bit.
got
She's
her
like a
link. Yeah.
Yep, I think she did talk to you. She's a Polish trans lady I am friends with. But point is that yeah, that there are documents that specifically highlight the talk about the destroying the resistance in Ukraine that was happening at the time. So things like that do exist. They are not though. Oh, to be fair, he never said, for example, with Tatari, I want to destroy them as a nation or like ethnic group. He said they were traitors and collaborators with Nazis. That's why he deported them. So, but that was, obviously a cleansing operation. So yeah, you can
Yeah, but at
use
least with
that as
Stalin, the
argument.
intention was to remove that ethnic group. So that obviously, but unfortunately, that
Yeah, but
measure of the genocide
Russification is
convention never got concluded. So
Russification
yeah,
also is that you kill people there and then you replace them with Russian speakers and you make books and everything in Russian, as they do, and they did do it. Also with Lemkin, I kind of disagree a little bit. I'm not saying he's like, there are other people, obviously. There are Kolchitsky, Snyder, other people
Snyder,
like
yeah.
to talk about. Kolchitsky, I think, is the best person actually to talk about to talk about Holodomor in particular, because I think, is the most knowledgeable. And I personally appreciate his take that it doesn't really matter whether the famine itself was intentional or not. It's what they did afterwards is what matters. And to me, that's like the best argument, because talking about the famine itself, you get, bogged down in a lot of details, essentially. But
Well,
with the Lemkin thing, his was like, he said it consisted of 4 steps, right? So the extermination of Ukrainian national elite, which he considered to be part of genocide, liquidation of Ukrainian Church Orthodox, which they did, extermination of the significant part of the Ukrainian peasantry, as well as custodians of tradition, so like music, language, literature, folklore, that sort of shit, and populating the territory with the nationalities with intent of mixing Ukrainians with them, which would eventually lead to the dissolution of the Ukrainian nation. That's uh, points he made out why he thought it was genocide. So yeah, but like I said, it doesn't really. Also, you're kind of like arguing with the consensus at this point, which I really kind of like don't
well,
understand.
no, I don't disagree with any fact you're saying. It's just that every parameter you just introduced there is evidence of what would have been an older definition of genocide that wasn't adopted by the UN, right? These would all be like ethnocide
I'm
or
not saying
cultural,
the
yeah.
Lincoln is like that. I just made his points because people know him. I prefer like Kuchitsky, to be honest, a lot, and Snyder as well. But yeah, people just know him, so that's why I bring it up. But yeah, most people, I think, does actually UK. Yeah, UK also says it's genocide, agrees that it was genocide. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I'm ever the subversive.
Yeah.
Loner
Is this
box
used-
in shambles.
Yeah, not really.
Okay, first of all, I will
Yeah.
say that appealing to just because the country said so didn't mean shit. But
Reduced to
Yeah,
rubble
yeah,
and
I'm
cinders
just
and
saying.
ashes in front of the whole fucking stream, dude.
Nah, he's a smarty one. But yeah, I do think there also have been a lot of like new information that was recently public from like archives and things like that that is worth noting. I can send you a link afterwards if you want. There's a lot of like there's a lot of like proof there of the intentionality, which is quite important when you speak about genocide and shit like that. So there are a lot of new stuff, and also a lot of stuff was obviously hidden. Most people had absolutely no idea. I forgot. I think even Kulchitsky himself was like, "It's not a genocide," but then he realized it was when he learned more about it. So it's
I think some of this is to do with debates over how much grain was actually available to send out and shit like that.
Yeah, I'm a lot of details. I'm particularly not really even that important in a sense, because it's about the treatment, and that's what Paul, Paul, right? I think, yeah, correct.
You brought up, you know, that sort of thing into say Destiny actually brought it up to say like, oh, 4 million people like died, you know, because of this. Also, 4 million people died because of the World War II here, right? So because they used to die, and honestly, but the point
Well,
is
that
that
sucks.
true.
I see like I see a way for humanity to not have you grow up in a place where dying is just kind of like, we're used to dying. We fucking World War II, World War One,
Yeah,
Holodomor. We know how to
I
die over here.
understand,
I hate
but
that because there's so many young people in your country that are just never gonna grow up because of this bullshit, right?
yeah, that's one part of the tragedy living in a place that is, you know, with Russia next door. So yeah, that's pretty. I mean, I wish it was different. Of course, I wish there was a generation in my, you know, I thought it would be different. I thought it would in 21st century it would not happen, and that we can have like, you know, a better life. But that seems to be the case. So, you know, there is wanting and there is reality, and those are two different things. So yeah, but I do appreciate Destiny is not here, so I cannot
Oh, I'm here,
he
just
would not.
hanging out.
Oh, you're here. I appreciate so much like what you said to Paul about it's just so refreshing to see an American who actually understands the mentality of people here. Not to dig at Paul or anything, but I'm
No.
just saying. Yeah, it's just pretty. Paul himself said he was like kind of moved by that, because you brought it up in a very good way. Like I first time I ever was actually listen to Destiny, and he said that people don't really want peace, they want justice. I nearly the single stoic Slavic tear fell from my eyes, you know, because it's so very true, and it's understandable to people, I guess, who are not living in a country that is privileged enough to be safe and to be having like the baddest, biggest army and nuclear arsenal, and nobody will, you know, attack you in that way. So yeah, I appreciate that a lot.
I don't
They
think
need a
it
progressive.
I don't think
No
it
justice, no peace.
deified me, like, but it was well put. Like I meant that sincerely.
Yeah, it was
Like I
well put.
said, well, when people engage with me, they typically let me get like 10 seconds into what I think, and then start calling me a dipshit or an asshole or whatever the fuck, you know, and just like the typical kind of like cut down kind of, and that's how they present the facts. And it's just like, who listens to a perspective when it's couched in like, you're a fucking retard and this happened, and then, you know what I mean, like, how am I? Nobody, right? And so like Destiny's willingness to just like say it without, you know, making any implications about my belief system or whatever the fuck, it was refreshing to see that.
Although I understand, I would say that most people would make, especially if you talk to Ukrainians about that, they would make that implication immediately. Not that you're retarded, but that you are pro-Russian and hiding it, because that's what we usually. I'm not saying you are. I don't think you are. That's why
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
cordial.
if I
But
am, they have yet to mail the check to the address that I
you be
provided.
the next.
You know?
You be the next Tim Pool, okay?
Yeah.
But a point is that most people, just so you understand why many people might be, even pro-Ukrainian people who are not Ukrainian, might be quite aggressive about that, is because most people are doing this. Oh, Ukrainians are dying. We just don't want Ukrainians to die. Oh, we just want to stop the suffering. La, la, and all of that. They're doing it not because they're genuinely even giving a fuck about the people and the death, right? They're
Yeah.
doing it because they just don't want to cut off aid to Ukraine, because they want us to be rolled by Russia. So because of that, most people
I don't
just
want
hear
you to
this.
be rolled. I definitely don't want anybody to be rolled by Russia or anybody else, right?
Well, we will be if we don't have enough support. So,
I
you know,
understand
it's
that.
just
I understand that, and
yeah.
I have argued against, you know, the United States' continued arming of Ukraine, and the reason for that is just
Yeah, you said.
well, the continued armament, right? I'm not against us sending as much aid as is needed or possible or whatever, but like the continued armament, the kind of like further armament, it's hard for me to separate myself from the millions. I don't know how many people, once the tallies are done on this conflict, how many millions of people will be dead? You know?
Well, here's the thing. You're looking at it from a perspective of a person on another continent.
Yeah.
So for you, the war stops, good, right? So the war ends, great. That's the perspective of most people. But point is that if the war right now, right this second stops, and for example, my city where I live is no longer bombed, yeah, which seems good, on on a surface level. But why do you think would I be against that? Because I am. But why would you think I'd
Well,
be? Yes.
you specifically as a Ukrainian person would be against, well, hold on, against the cessation of hostilities,
Yes.
or
Yes. If the war stops now,
because
if we are
there is no political outcome in that country yet. It's all up in the air, right? And so basically Ukraine would have to admit that part of Ukraine is now Russia, right?
that's one of the reasons, but definitely not in my even top 5.
Okay.
I would say.
All right.
Yeah.
So
So
what would be your reason then?
so reason number one that the stopping of it now is a death sentence to my country, because in a time of 5 or 10 years they will just attack again, and nobody will stop them, just like nobody stopped them before. So we will be weakened significantly, because we will be licking our wounds, trying to restore our power plants. That are 70% of our power is down now because of Russian bombing of the power plants. So we have heat, electricity
Understandable,
problem,
yeah.
all of that. Yeah. But point is that restoring that is extremely difficult. Restoring cities that have been extremely bombed is also quite difficult. It's quite simple to understand, like how many shit we will have to. The economy is like as in shambles as it is, and it only is hanging by the aid people give us. So we are thankful for that, obviously. But nobody would invest in a country like we are, that everyone understands will be attacked in 10 years or something, or 5 years. We will not be able to join any alliances of any guarantees of our protection in the future. NATO, for example, is not possible when you have disputed territories that nobody will recognize, and all of that shit.
Sure.
So that's number one reason. So all of the death of my friends, of my of soldiers, I'm a volunteer at the front as well, all of that would be for nothing. And that's truly the worst thing I can possibly imagine, worse than death, in my opinion. So yeah, that's number one reason. Yeah.
That's horrible,
reason.
and I'm sorry that you've lost so many friends.
Yeah, well, second reason is that occupation doesn't stop. So just because the active war stops, right? So there's no longer, active fighting, right, in the regions and stuff like that. There are areas that are occupied. Our people will continue to be occupied, and what will happen is that they will live in a complete and utter isolation, poverty, with zero human rights under Russian occupiers that are loner escaped. Sorry, loner, we bored him. Under Russian occupation, and currently even the fucking UN admits that rape, torture is a systematic issue by Russian occupation and by Russian forces of prisoners of war and of civilians. Civilians in particular, men, women, children, whatever, doesn't matter. Like, actually, people don't really talk about it, but actually more men even suffered from rape than
So
women.
what would you say to this? Looking at it in hindsight, right? And maybe looking forward to any further conflicts with Russia. Would it have been better for the United States to just give an all or nothing kind of red line in the sand, like, we're going to put troops on the border? If you lodge so much as a pea shooter into that, we'll look at it as an attack on America, blah, blah, blah. Like that whole, and then, how many millions of people who are Russian would be alive? How many millions of people who are Ukrainian would be alive if we had not sat by, right?
Too much, but you're overestimating a little bit the number of people dead. But do you mean like before the whole ordeal, like in 22 or like in 2014, or what time are you saying
I'm
this
talking
should
about,
happen?
the 22, kind of like the major incursion where they pushed all the way to the capital, and all of that territory had to be retaken. You know what I mean? If America had, because like there was this huge border buildup right before it, right? It's not like we live in a world where Russia can build up that amount of artillery and tanks and soldiers to just sweep in. So it's like we knew it was happening. America definitely could have mobilized local troops, right, and just been like, okay, now what? You know what I mean? And I don't think Russia wants to be turned into a nuclear parking lot any more than America does. So would that have been better, right, in retrospect? And would it be a better foreign policy for America to adopt going forward, however this conflict works out, right?
Well, I mean, obviously, it like sounds like a fantasy land. Someone sweeps in, saves their ass, nobody dies. But it's just deeply unrealistic. Like, America now is their like isolationist bind, as is like quite a lot of other countries. They don't want to directly fight with Russia whatsoever, and we're not asking them. Even Europe doesn't want to. Never mind the United States that is on another continent and has a
so from an uninformed on the local politics perspective, right? What good is it? And Destiny, I want to know your thoughts on this too. What good is it being the biggest military on the planet? And when it comes to however you said I'm overestimating the deaths, but however many people are dead because of this, right? The difference between that and a broader expansion of Russian influence, like how would it have not been better for us to flex that muscle via just putting NATO troops or American troops with a NATO fucking backbone on that border and saying you shall not pass?
I'm not saying it wouldn't be. It's just a Lord of the Rings sort of fantasy, and
why?
I'm saying you would never have done it.
Why is mobilizing troops and putting them on a border a Lord of the Rings fantasy?
Well, because we're not in NATO.
Because NATO is supposed to only protect NATO protects NATO countries.
Yep.
So your real enemy here is NATO.
No, NATO protects NATO countries.
But NATO doesn't Ukraine border NATO countries on the western side?
We border it, but we're not in NATO. One of the main reasons of 2014 was invasion of Russia did, and annexation was not to let us be in NATO. So we are not protected from their invasive
Okay, so fuck the NATO troops, American troops then.
Okay,
good old boys in fucking red, white, and blue.
This is the issue, okay? Imagine you've got like 10 people at a bar, okay? And imagine 2 of these dudes carry knives with them, all right? When these guys go to fight other people, all right, they don't have to pull their knife out because they know that nobody else has a knife, so it's okay. It's just going to be fist fighting, right? Nobody's going to get killed in any of these fights. There's 2 guys with knives, but nobody else has knives, so nobody's going to get killed, okay? Because everybody's going to be fist fighting because that's the rules. That's what they understand. However, if the 2 people with knives start fighting each other, well, now it gets really scary because now there's a temptation, knowing the other side has a knife, that they're going to pull their knife out, and now you have like a knife fight where everybody might be getting stabbed. There's a huge escalation there that nobody in that room is interested in seeing because it starts to call into question, like, the end result for any fight that happens between the 2. That's the reason why NATO and then the Russian sphere of influence exist in a world where they're never supposed to.
It's not a knife fight, though. The dudes with knives are not going to attack if it's not a knife fight, though.
I don't understand what you're saying.
There's no such thing as a knife fight with America, dude. We've got the biggest dick on the planet.
It doesn't. No. It doesn't matter how big your dick is.
Laser.
No. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Everybody has When 2 nuclear powers have nuclear weapons, the knives are the nukes. You can't go to war with each other because everybody just gets blown up. Everybody gets obliterated. So the whole point about making these complicated, like supranational entities like NATO is to avoid people like Russia and the United States ever going like directly, fighting head to head with each other. That's the point.
I understand that. I understand nuclear aversion, right? But I just don't see. I don't know, from a perspective of it being provocative, right? For the United States to involve itself in that way, and that's why NATO is there as a buffer state, right, or as a buffer organization to keep so that America can work through NATO to ultimately achieve the containment of Russia.
NATO is not a buffer. NATO is NATO. Like if you fuck with NATO, you're fucking with it's. I think the term is a nuclear umbrella.
Then what is the difference between us putting American troops on the border and having a red line with Russia saying you're not going to set a toe into Ukraine
Because Ukraine is not
a-
in NATO.
Okay, so why doesn't the United States make a treaty with Ukraine that precludes military incursions from Russia?
Well, we did have it.
It's a complicated question, but like,
Well, here's the problem that I have, and maybe this is simplistic thinking, but the end result of that complicated question is a million people fucking dead, and a bunch of
you have to stop looking at you have to stop looking you have to stop looking you have to stop looking at just like the people dead, because there could be way more people dead depending on what's going on. Okay,
Yes.
that's it's not just like a
profit. I'm looking at the profit incentive too of the American weapons
it's not
companies
about that. It
involved.
has nothing to do with that. This is almost completely and totally disconnected and unrelated.
It has nothing to do with
Here's the
profit.
issue. Without getting into complicated issues that even I don't understand fully because I haven't done the research, the reality is Ukraine can't join NATO or couldn't join NATO in the past because Russia might want to fuck with it in the future. That's the actual answer. So if Ukraine made a sincere and serious bid to join NATO, which was almost inconceivable prior to at least 2014, Russia still felt like they had some kind of control over the politics of that country, whether it was through Yanukovych or whether it was through Poroshenko, I think.
Poroshenko was after Maidan. No, Yanukovych was.
Okay, there might have been another. There was another. There are other leaders prior to that, but I don't know. But like,
Yushchenko,
the reality is that like Russia feels like they have some control there, and if they join NATO, what you're basically saying is when a country joins NATO, what we're saying is this piece is no longer on the board. You're not allowed to mess with it anymore, and Russia probably would never accept that when it comes to Ukraine. So in your mind, you're right in that if Ukraine was in NATO, they wouldn't get attacked. But the way that would play out is like, oh, okay, Ukraine, you want to join NATO? As soon as you say that, Russia's like, oh, well, we're full on invading every part of this country because that's never going to happen. That's the issue that you run into.
Okay. Okay. So what if there was ceding of some border territory to Russia on the table for the NATO? Like, what if that was part of the arrangement, right?
You would have to cede so much that Ukraine is losing. There's two huge problems with this. One is there's probably never enough that Russia would be happy with. And two, if there was a part that Russia would be happy with, it would be so much of Ukraine that would be ceded that you have like 30% of the country left after enough that they feel like they're secure. They probably were going to want to take over a whole bunch of Ukrainian industry, agriculture. They're going to want like a land bridge to Crimea so that they have access to the sea unobstructed. Like it's going to be so much that at that point it's like, and then it's also the idea of like, well, fuck, why the fuck would we give up part of our country?
Why the fuck
like,
should we,
yeah,
though?
would Ukraine want to be in NATO if it meant giving up so much of their country anyway? Like at that point, they might as well just lose it to Ukraine in war than have NATO strip it from them.
Here's the thing. I agree with everything you said, but also there's like most of our industry and of our money-making resources are all in the east and south, which are coincidentally the parts that Russia wants the most. So that's like losing of that is just losing our entire ability to be an independent country and to have any sort of like economical prosperity whatsoever.
Well, one way or the other, right? I see Ukraine as an ongoing like economic project for the United States from a very cold perspective.
Wait. But why?
Like one way or the other,
What do you
the
mean?
United States is going to be investing in Ukraine for a long time.
Yeah, but
right?
hold on. But Ukraine and Poland and Hungary and Romania and these Eastern European countries, they don't want to be projects of the West. These are
Thank you,
places that
Jesus.
have plenty of industry, talent, plenty of natural resources. Like these are countries that can exist and even thrive given the right governments and lack of corruption on their own. Why would they want to just be projects?
It seems like we're dancing around the fucking shit here. It seems to me like we're dancing around the real issue here. The real issue is that Russia is a hugely ancient, lumbering beast and needs to be fucking countered at every fucking possible like angle, right? It needs to be stopped, right?
Yes, I agree. Give us weapons.
Well, that's the thing is like you blowing yourselves out to the point where now it's like people are saying like, hey, you should conscript 18-year-olds there.
Oh, that's
Right?
America says that. We didn't agree
I know
to
you
that.
guys
yet.
aren't doing it. I'm just saying that like America is like, hey, get your teenagers involved, right?
Listen, I don't like that either. Let me be like for real with you. Only because it's not a fair deal. If they were like, listen, we give you like 2% of your budget, of our budget, we give you like 3%.
5%, whatever. Not, I don't know, enough that you need. Like we give you planes, we give you long-range missiles. They just recently, only recently, almost 3 years of all-out war, they give us their permission to use long-range missiles, which incredibly affected us already, especially me in Kharkiv,
Well,
in
I
terms
mean,
of
like,
how much I'm getting. Just listen to this. So if
okay,
they gave us everything we needed and more, and then said, but you have to fully commit to this fucking war, like throw fucking everyone. This needs to be like a short war that you win
yeah.
fast. That's one thing. But they didn't give us shit in last year. They prohibited other people from giving us shit. UK, for example, they UK wanted to give us permission to use their Shadow Storm missiles for a while, but United States didn't agree to it. So they sabotaged our aid from other countries as well. But they also demand that we throw 18-year-olds on the front. That's the bad part. Not
Well, that's the
throwing
profit motive that I was trying to talk about earlier that everybody said I was a dumb cuck for bringing up, but whatever.
Well, I
you know.
didn't say so, but I'm just saying that
Yeah, I know
that's
you
not
didn't.
a fair deal.
I was just arguing with the chat, which is never a good idea. Fuck you,
Oh, I
chat.
see. Yeah, I don't see chat right now. Hello, by the way, DGG. But yeah, point is that just that's unfair in itself, obviously, right? That's quite a demand. If you want to demand things, then you have to also provide things, in my opinion. Just demands, is not something we enjoy. But it's not about the. It's just I understand you want like this better thing, better world, and things like that. And obviously, I would prefer my, for example, my to not be bombed every day. Obviously, I would prefer that. But and my but it's not just exactly how the world works, whether you like it or not. And also, what we can do is stand against Russia, and we had insane success with it in terms of just how they want to just, everyone predicted will fall apart in a week and they will take the entire country, right? It didn't happen. It's nearly 3 years now. And yes, there is a stagnation, and also there is huge difficulties with limitation, with not getting aid from Europe and United States on time at all. We've been thrown like 3 tanks against 300 tanks. All of that is definitely a problem. But there was a moment as well where we have like insanely high morale, insanely high investment in war, and everyone who participated in it. Like, just think about it, like in the first year of this war in 22, right, and half of 23, practically all people on the front were volunteers. So that was people that went and volunteered. Right now, it's not like that anymore. There is mobilization, right? But but first year and a half, it's actually, people don't really talk about it, but it's actually like miraculous if you think about it. We didn't need mobilization for such a long time facing off Russia that is 30 times our size. Because how many people went there on the front lines? Like in my city, on the first day of invasion, lines of people, kilometers of people, okay, enlisting. So it's just, that was the moment, right? But the stagnation
So
and
what
the
topic is
aid,
Destiny fully
and
researched so we can get a
also
straight
all
answer
the
from about something?
limitations and
Anything related to
everything
Israel-Palestine?
has
Anything related to
affected
COVID and
us, of
vaccines?
course,
Anything
in
related
morale, in
to
a sense. I'm not
probably
saying we're
like the
not
current
into it
Ukrainian-Russian
anymore,
war?
obviously, but it's not
Anything
as it
related
used to be.
to
Obviously, people get
I
tired.
think the January
It's
6th
normal.
stuff or a lot of Trump
In
admin
every war,
stuff? What do you mean?
people
There's a
get
lot of
tired.
subjects. I
Like,
just don't know everything.
It's just, it's not like it's a unique thing. But what I'm saying is that's realistic. Helping us is realistic. So like Nordic countries do now, they're actually like quite invested recently in our success with F-16 and and Patriots and all of that. But that's what you can do. You can't reverse back and say, oh, Ukraine should have been allowed in NATO, or American troops shouldn't been there. It should be, don't help me, okay?
Here's my understanding of this, right? And I'm gonna try and say this in a way that isn't like flagged off of every type of social media ever. Okay, so we're gonna use a metaphor. Okay,
you just say the thing. Just say the thing. We don't need a metaphor.
No. I don't think we can say the thing. I don't think I should say the thing. Okay, America has the bleeding edge of bleeding edge when it comes to military shit, right? So it sounds to me, it's like, wouldn't it be better in the long run for everybody, for people that are living under the regime in Russia who don't want to be, right? for these border countries that want to be their own people and their own countries and interface with
We're our own
the economy.
people. Already, we have
No,
history.
no,
Okay.
you understand. That was, I understand that the language is very. I didn't mean it that way.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
you want the right to be who you are, right? You want the right to your country, for that country's
to be like
borders
everyone
to be
else.
right, for the country's borders to be respected, for you to have, access to the global economy and a flourishing, right? But here's the thing. We do Operation Simultaneous Hydra Head Slice, okay? We know where they're keeping these nuclear weapons. Boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom.
sure.
Well, no,
Right?
we don't. No, that's the whole point of nuclear weapons. You don't know where they are.
Okay. Then step one is, why the fuck don't we know where they're keeping their nuclear
We can't
weapons?
know. Okay, so there's a concept called the nuclear triad, right? Which means you can launch nukes from different places, like air, land, or sea. There are nuclear subs that are supposed to be in
I
the
understand
ocean.
all that.
Yeah.
There are submarines, there are airplanes, and
Yeah,
there
so we
are
can't. There's no way that we can
ground-launched
find.
nuclear
Yeah, so we can't. We
facilities.
don't
Yeah,
know
you
where
can
all the
attach
nuclear
them
subs
to
are,
anything,
right?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Well, that's problem number one, man. Right? Operation Simultaneous Hydra Head Cut requires
Do you
us to locate these nuclear weapons.
Well, let's just go for
now.
10 more minutes, okay?
Paul, stop
Where are
giving
they
me
at?
Marvel. And it's very cool. Like it's very Marvel comic thing. But I'm just trying to ground you in reality, okay? And reality is that nobody's going to nuke anyone for Ukraine. In fact,
I'm sorry. I feel like if the reality is we can arm any country against any other aggressive country with the top of the line shit that we've got, right? I think that the reality is we could do what I'm talking about, or some fucking functional version of it, right? Where it's like we use the might of our military and the might of our fucking satellites and our jets and our own counter offensive shit, right? I think that like us eternally supporting border skirmishes.
it's not
right?
a border skirmish.
Well, okay, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't mean like, I'm just talking about like
I understand that for you it is just some, I don't know, Donbass and Zaporizhzhia, who cares? I understand that. That's not news to me. I have been talking to Americans, unfortunately for me, for a long while. I just am trying to make it clear that the entire nation is at stake right now for us. And for other people in Europe, it also is quite worrisome because their assets are also on the line, much more than, American assets are, especially countries with already precedents of Russian annexation, such as Georgia and Moldova, that Russia also invaded and annexed territories from.
I don't believe that we don't have tabs on these nukes, man.
Whatever it is, whether you have or not, it's not the case that you will use them.
Because that's the whole thing that's keeping them safe. That's the whole thing from keeping the entire world from going, I'm tired of looking at Putin's puffy ass fucking face, talking bullshit every day. He's usurped, bitch. He's out of here, and this is now a United States project, just like the rest of the world. You know what I mean? Like, they're the only thing standing between us and that is how many nukes? A few thousand nukes can't be found somewhere on the globe. You kidding me? Dude, have you ever seen a Steven Seagal movie? This shit is wild.
Yeah.
They will target shit from space.
Well,
you wouldn't support some shit like that. Yeah. You wouldn't support completely and utterly taking away everything that Russia's got, right?
It's not about what I would support. I would support.
Okay,
I would support literally anything.
Then let's fucking do that.
Nobody will do it. You elected, not you, but people in the United States elected Trump.
Well, I'd like to announce that I'm running for president in 2028. PaulsEgo for president.
Well, then I vote for you. Okay, my vote is for you.
Operation Simultaneous Hydra Decapitation is what I'm running on.
Yeah.
Destiny's going to be my campaign manager. And we're going to take it's a 50 state.
Didn't you literally open this conversation saying that people wanted less war? How are you going to do that in this environment where everybody wants less war? That was the whole your whole opening argument had to do with people don't want war anymore.
Less war. Yeah. Operation Simultaneous Hydra Decapitation right, means that
Russia,
Russia
what will
can no
happen?
longer flex
China,
this nuclear
Iran.
nuclear arsenal. You know what I mean? It can't, because we've decapitated the Hydra, right? You see what I'm saying?
Destiny,
We
help
take
me
their
out.
queen off the chessboard. They're bullying us with their queen. They're like, yes, but if you send in your queen, we send in
They
our
are
queen.
bullying you, and your people agree with the bullying. They say, "Fuck Ukraine, nobody cares. Why should we risk World War II for them? World War III for them? Why should we
I
risk
don't
nuclear
want to risk anywhere.
aid and fuck them?" That's what
Because if
the
it's
entire country
simultaneous, what's
is.
the risk? Simultaneous Hydra decapitation. What are they going to do? Launch the, they decapitated that head as well. You know what I mean? Like, take it
They're
all.
not going to throw nuclear weapons at you. Jesus, that's
okay,
the whole
so,
point.
All right, so you're saying they're not going to throw nuclear weapons at me?
Of course not.
They don't have nukes right on
They
the
have
border.
nukes.
They don't have
use
nukes right in the Atlantic Ocean that are
nobody
positioned.
wants to use nukes.
All right, you go. Okay, wrap
Like,
this
that's the whole
conversation topic
point.
up in 1 minute. This is retarded. Okay, we can't
Oh,
just
yeah,
you
thank
can't
you,
run on
Jesus.
we can't just run on
Yeah.
on denuking Russia. They're gonna go to full on nuclear war with us. We
Yes.
can't just take somebody's nukes. It's just
That's why it's anyway, whatever. That's why it's a covert
you
operation.
can't do that covertly.
Destiny.
It's not that easy to just take somebody's nukes. These are nuclear subs that are
If you put it
untrackable.
on the fucking hush hush and you get some
You
fucking,
can't do
you
a
know what I
hush
mean?
hush. There's intelligence people are going to find out. It's going to leak. You can't keep an operation of that magnitude secret. There's no possible way that
You
there's
gotta
going
hold the fucking phone for a second. I'm not talking about SEAL Team 6. I'm talking about SEAL Team 1, Destiny. Okay? The guys that SEAL Team 6 was based on, we call them back. Right?
It's this an operation of this magnitude would be so huge. There would be so many different moving parts that like Russia would find out. It would just be totally unreasonable. It's not possible. And if you make any mistake at any part, then the whole world is nuclear wintered, and it would just be
Russia doesn't even need to try too hard. You literally will have likely Tulsi Gabbard in your intelligence. Like, they will know right away. You have like literally half the fucking administration that will come up to be fucking Russian, paid fuckers. So no. I mean, Paul, I really appreciate your imagination. It's very cool, and you should make a movie out of this. But yeah, just what I'm saying. I'm gonna go right now. Like, but all I'm saying is like I want something for my country that isn't a Marvel movie, and so far, the only thing that can happen is when Europe, steps up. I hope instead of the United States, which Nordics seem to be doing and Baltics seem to be doing, thank fuck, and help us with actual like things that on the ground can help us.
So what's the end goal? If not a decapitation and a removal from Russian power and influence, tons of nuclear weapons at which they're keeping the world at gunpoint, what is the end goal?
Our goal is quite less ambitious than yours. Because it's just the preservation of our nation and not to return to being subjugated and used as a bitch by Russia, and where they owned entire industry of my country before 2014. So everything was owned by Russian citizens in this country. And our goal is to preserve our nation and to somehow survive this shit. That's our goal. Pretty small, I'd say. On the big your goal as a big hegemonist country is to not succumb to fucking nuclear threats and not allow countries that have nuclear countries to bully countries that don't have nuclear weapons, especially since we gave those fucking nuclear weapons that we did have because of guarantees given us by United States and Russia of our sovereignty in Budapest Memorandum. So yeah, that's your goal, but you're not doing it.
Well, maybe I'm an advocate for us just doing it,
What I mean is not the Hydra operation, though, just so we're clear.
Okay, not Hydra simultaneous decapitation.
No, that's
I don't think sign on there for a minute.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that I'm not on your Hydra mission. I'm just saying that, that's just,
Would you join my Hydra mission if I was putting something like that together?
You know what? At this point, Paul, I'd join anything. I'd sign a contract with Devil himself, okay?
This is what I'm talking about. This is bridges, Destiny. You see what I mean? Ideologically, not on the same page, but a bridge has been built.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Good luck. Yeah. Bye bye, everyone.
Have fun. Bye.
Yeah, Paul. Good luck with your presidency. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Yeah, I'll get out of here too, Destiny. It's been fun. Thanks for talking to me today.
Yep. Love you. Be careful.
Have a good one, bud.
Bye.